Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Laura. I'd like to call the October 5th, 2020 meeting of the Town of Niskayuna Planning Board and Zoning Commission to order. Mr. Henry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. LaFlemme.
Present.
Mr. Screbutenis.
Here.
Mr. Khan.
Here.
Mr. McPartland.
Here.
Mr. Darpino.
Here.
Mr. Oster.
Here.
Ms. Gold.
Present.
Ms. Shenfield is absent. Chairman Walsh.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Okay, we got a few sets of minutes to approve tonight. First set of minutes being from the August 10th, 2020 meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion for approval by Mr. Oster. Do I have a second? And it looks like it's second by Mr. Khan. Thank you, Mr. Khan. All right,
Yes, sir.
any corrections at all or changes? I have none. No? Okay, seeing nobody with any changes. All those in favor of approval of the August 10th, 2020 meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Mr. Chairman, I'll abstain. I didn't attend the meeting.
Okay, one abstention. Thank you, Mr. Screbutenis. Any opposed? Hearing no one opposed, we'll approve those minutes as submitted with one abstention by Mr. Screbutenis. Okay, August 24th, 2020 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Oster and again second by Mr. Khan. Thank you. All right, any corrections on those? I do have one minor correction and I can pull it up. It's on, let's see, page 5, line 152. It states, this is regarding Upstate Gun. It says he believes it is too large, too slightly. That's supposed to be too unsightly in regards to the large container. So I want to replace slightly to unsightly on page 5, line 152. Does anybody else have any changes or corrections to those minutes? No? Okay, seeing none, I consider that a minor modification, just a slight correction there. All those in favor of approving the minutes as modified signify by saying aye.
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 Is anyone opposed?
Chairman
Hearing
Walsh,
none opposed?
Chairman Walsh, I will abstain from that. I was not at that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DiArpino. We have an you will abstain, thank you. And those minutes are approved with the one modification. Okay, last set of minutes, September 14th, 2020. And I bet you Mr. Oster is going to have a motion to approve those again.
If no one else is going to jump in, I'll.
And Mr. Khan has already seconded. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Do we have any changes on those? Again, I have one minor change. I'll pull it up here. My change is on page 40. It's just, I want to have an addition, or not page 40, excuse me, line 40. Well, I'm glad there's not 40 pages, huh? Line 40. And what it is on line 40, it basically states new business and it's blank underneath. I just wanted to have the words, the planning board had no new business tonight, just like we do for the unfinished business, because it looks like it's blank, maybe missing something there. So a very minor modification, and that's all I had. Okay. Does anybody else have any changes to those minutes of September 14th? Okay. All those in favor of approval of the September 14th minutes as slightly modified, signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Okay. Seeing no one opposed, we'll approve the September 14th, 2020 meeting minutes as slightly modified. Thank you, everybody. Move on. No public hearings tonight, so we'll move right to privilege of the floor, and we'll turn it over to Laura to coordinate that. Laura, thank you.
Okay. I have a letter that I'm going to read first, and then I do have a bunch of people on the line. I'll call out the ones that I know, and then just let anybody else who's on that wants to speak. The first letter was written on September 23rd, 2020. says, Dear Niskayuna Town Planning Board and Town Residents, I am Daniel Fromowitz, and I reside at 1010 Shannon Boulevard in the Avon Crest North development. A few weeks ago, I saw and felt heavy equipment being used at the old 1909 house at 2627 Troy Schenectady Road, which is in the northwest corner of Route 7 and Shannon Boulevard. A few days later, I walked over and happened to see the builder who said he plans to apply to subdivide the lot to build more homes on Shannon and Route 7. I am speaking on behalf of more than 40 different households in Avon Crest North and the immediate surrounding area who are opposed to additional development in this neighborhood. I subsequently learned that the builder owns the entire lot, which is over 4 acres. As one of the homeowners directly across the street from the potential subdivision, I would not like to see any existing trees removed or additional homes built. I feel strongly about this because all the homeowners near me, myself included, were told by our builder and our realtors when we bought our Avon Crest North homes that this wooded area was forever wild or unbuildable. Although more than 40 different households are opposed to the proposed building, we do believe there are win-win scenarios where everyone can still benefit, neighbors, the town, and the builder. First, I would like to share some history of the Avon Crest North development to explain our position. In my 7-page attachment, the first 2 pages show the Avon Crest North brochure from Century 21 Advertising, Forever Wild Woods around much of the development. The brochure has a neighborhood map that shows a skinny open space along the west side of Shannon Boulevard with Nature Conservancy land nearby it. I highlighted the open space in question that was advertised to the original potential buyers. The strip is shown as both part of the development and too thin for any homes along most of it. It goes the entire length of the western side of Shannon Boulevard from Route 7 to the Bend. Page 3 of the attachment is a site map of Avon Crest North from Century 21. It also shows open space along the west side of Shannon Boulevard with Nature Conservancy space beyond it. Again, the open space extends the entire length of the western side of Shannon Boulevard from Route 7 to the Bend. Page 4 of the attachment is a subdivision map of Avon Crest North obtained from the Niskayuna Town Planner's Office, filed in the Schenectady County's Clerk Office in December 1987. Again, I highlighted the area shown as open space. There is an amended version of the subdivision map showing that open space along Shannon Boulevard is only at the bend and slightly wider than the original indicated, but not existing along the remaining distance to Route 7. However, the amended version was not filed in the Schenectady County Clerk's Office until April 1991. That was after most of the homes on Shannon Boulevard and most single-family homes in the development were already built and sold. There was no mechanism for the original homeowners to know that they were not buying into a development with as much open space as advertised. The original homeowners, some of whom still live in Avon Crest North, passed their knowledge on to subsequent owners about the open space all along the western side of Shannon Boulevard. In fact, even to this day, it is not evident that the trees and grass along the western side of Shannon Boulevard are not public land. In my almost 20 years in my home, I have never once seen anyone from 1909 house ever step onto that part of the land. I have only seen neighborhood kids walk through it to get to the Lich Kill, or occasionally adults parking their cars on Shannon Boulevard to get out and enjoy the nature. Even when there was a resident living at the 1909 house who took care of the lawn in front of their home, they never mowed the grass along Shannon Boulevard. In my almost 20 years here, I, along with others, have seen Town of Niskayuna trucks routinely pull up with their lawnmowers and mow that area. Perhaps the town was using the original subdivision map, which provides that the entire western edge of Shannon Boulevard is public land. Regardless, since it was the town mowing equipment operated by town employees, Niskayuna taxpayers have been paying for the upkeep of grass along the entire western edge of Shannon Boulevard for decades. In particular, Avon Crest North residents have likely been paying for that upkeep because open space in the development is in a park district paid for by fees assessed against the Avon Crest North property owners. I have a letter documenting this. The wooded area and open space is very appealing. When I was looking for a home to buy in the Capital District in 2001, I liked the natural beauty of Niskayuna and the natural beauty of the wooded area across the street from me. When people enter the town from Latham, they can see a sign on Route 7 giving us the Tree City USA designation. I did not have to choose to buy Niskayuna, but the open space in Avon Crest North was a key selling point, especially with some of it directly across from my house. I believe it is a financial disadvantage to the town to allow the trees to be removed and additional homes to be built in Avon Crest North. The town has already been taking in tax revenue due to the existence of the wooded area for decades. The selling point of all the open space, including the space along the western end of Shannon Boulevard, always told to us as forever wild or open space until I met with the builder this year, has kept some purchase home purchase prices high. This led to increased town property tax income from 100 households in the neighborhood. While a few new homes might result in a short-term increase in net revenue to the town, with increased population comes increased costs. For example, if the town population goes up, say 10%, then that is 10% more local traffic heading to 10% more highway repairs, 10% more effort to police, and the town at the same rate being policed now, 10% more time to process property taxes, and 10% more in other services. Increasing the population leads to nearly zero increase in long-term net income. Niskuna's population has generally been growing from 500 residents 200 years ago to about 22,000 today. Our population thus increased over 40 times during that period. 1 second, please. Costs to the town rise in proportion to the taxable income. Worse than that, if the trees were moved, the homes on Shannon Boulevard and in the neighborhood would lose a key selling point. One of the original buyers at the east end of Shannon Boulevard sold their brand new homes after only 6 months because the loss of wooded area within the next phase of Avon Crest North development was a negative to them. Losing a key selling point would lead to future prices of dozens of homes being lower than they could be, leading to lower tax revenue that the town would have received. Many homes in the neighborhood, including the one on the other corner of Route 7 and Shannon Boulevard, have been on the market for a long time. Taking away the wooded area would make the neighborhood homes harder to sell and thus lower prices. With the extra population-related costs and the lower appeal of the neighborhood, in the long run, the town would lose revenue from removing the trees and allowing more homes in Avon Crest North. Pages 5 and 6 of the attachment contain a November 6, 1990 letter from Diane Sturman, Niskuna Town Planner, to the rest of the planning board. In this letter, I highlighted where Ms. Sturman stated that there is no guidance for reducing the amount of open space in Avon Crest North. I also highlighted where Ms. Sturman noted that the planning board refused a request from the original Avon Crest North developer to reduce the amount of open space in Avon Crest North, even if calculations showed an excess of open space. Although technically the open space may not apply to what has been and currently looks like open along the entire western side of Shannon Boulevard, the fact is that Avon Crest North should not have its natural views reduced, as nature is part of the plan of the Avon Crest North development. The last page of the attachment is a follow-up letter from just a few weeks ago. On November 26, 1990, from the town planner to my Shannon Boulevard neighbor, I highlighted where Ms. Sturman stated that the town planning board was unanimous in a second decision that the open space in this subdivision should not be reduced and the open space should be maintained as originally described. Again, the principle is that all of the natural areas should remain. In sum, increasing the number of households does not provide long-term net income to the town, and in the Avon Crest North subdivision specifically, there would be a long-term loss. The gain to the town for not having a new subdivision and not allowing removal of the wooded area or open space is number 1, preservation of the remaining natural areas around Niskuna homes, and number 2, extra income from maintaining the open space and natural areas for the 67 single-family homes and 45 townhomes in Avon Crest North. This leads to increased desire to buy in Niskuna. Removing the natural beauty of the wooded and open spaces is only going to make it harder to attract people to our area. Niskuna is known for its multiple pockets of natural areas within our neighborhoods. Along Shannon Boulevard, deer come from the open space and wooded area and walk through neighborhood properties. The natural areas near and along Shannon Boulevard serve both residents and wildlife. In addition to the town government benefiting, retaining the wooded area along the west end of Shannon Boulevard would also benefit neighbors. I already mentioned the financial benefits to Avon Crest North residents and to the town. Both residents of Avon Crest North and the surrounding roads of Mohawk Road and Route 7 take advantage of the grassy area along Shannon Boulevard to walk their dogs, or they appreciate it while walking, running, biking, skateboarding, or driving by. Shannon Boulevard is one of only 2 entrances to Avon Crest North, so this area is frequently seen by residents. I mentioned how the area is also used as an access point to the Leishkill, and I have never seen it used privately by the past owner in 1909 home at the corner. Besides the open space along Shannon Boulevard, on the west side of the lot in question is a short driveway where people park to fish in the Leishkill. As I said before, I believe everyone can win. I have already stated the benefits to the town and to my neighbors for keeping the wooded area and open space as is. What about the proposed builder? I have heard good things from about the builder from others and from him personally. That said, I believe he can still benefit financially by not subdividing. For the same reason that I and several of my neighbors bought our What outcomes that is because of the privacy of having a natural view permanently near our homes. The 4-acre lot is a prime lot for a future homeowner who wants to live in Niskayuna in an area that both is easily accessible and has a large private area. I see at least 3 different winning options for the proposed builder. Option number 1, the builder could maintain the wooded area as is and advertise the property to have a quiet wooded backyard and side yards. The wooded area is a key draw in the area and worth a lot in its current form. My family enjoys the dark, quiet view from our home and porch at night. New owners of the home near Route 7 would also enjoy the solitude without subdividing the land or removing the wooded area. The homes on or nearby Mohawk Road that are set back and retain woods along the road are valuable. The same can be done with this lot in question. Rebuilding or refurbishing the house only at the Route 7 side of the lot would be much quicker than subdividing and allow the builder to work on other projects more quickly. It would also save him the expense of reforming that topologically difficult terrain and preparing the environmental impact statement, since the land is both near the Leishik Hill and a gully that leads to it, and it's land that supports wildlife. Option number 2, since the builder may not have realized the benefit to the town and neighbors from not subdividing in Avon Crest North, perhaps the builder's title insurance can reimburse him for a portion of the land that the neighbors do not want altered. Option number 3, hypothetically, the town could offer to buy some part of the remaining wooded and grassy area behind the builder, including taxes accrued. Undeveloped land is rather cheap, and the builder could renovate or rebuild the home at the front of Route 7, which would remain the valuable part of the land. If the town did purchase this land, the town would benefit by adding to its parkland and connection to the Leishik Hill natural area. This approach also saves the builder the expense of reforming the difficult terrain and working on the environmental impact statement. In conclusion, many of us living in and around the Avon Crest North development relied on statements and documents that this was forever wild land. We routinely take advantage of the open space and wooded area bordering the western side of Shannon Boulevard. Some town residents also take advantage of the access point to the Leishik Hill directly from Route 7, just west of the 1909 house. Before building or buying their homes, all the homeowners on Shannon Boulevard near this area were told the land across the street could not be developed. In 3 decades, there has been no obvious indication that this was not true. The town planning department has already twice refused any reduction in open space in Avon Crest North. Recognizing the value of natural areas, the town has already been taking in extra income because this wooded area exists, and would eventually lose that income if the woods were taken away. We should not allow Avon Crest North to become less beautiful, usable, or valuable to over 100 households in favor of a handful of new homes on Shannon Boulevard. I hope the town and builder consider these points when continuing with plans for the property. Thank you very much for everyone's time. Daniel Fromritz of 1010 Shannon Boulevard. Among the over 40 households in Avon Crest North or the immediate area with similar sentiments who I am in contact with, the following neighbors wanted their names included in this privilege of the floor letter. Peter 2 of 44 County Clare Lane, Sonia and Mike Ward of 25 Dublin Lane, Aaron Breslin of 122 Killarney Drive, and Connie and Alan Clark of 142 Killarney Drive. The remainder of the letter is pictures and attachments that were referenced in the above, and can be shared if anybody on the planning board would like to see them during discussion. So I know the second person that I have that wanted to speak is Daniela Bigali. Daniela, are you able to be heard?
Can you hear me okay, Laura?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Thank you. So my name is Daniela Bigali. I'm at 4060 Windsor Drive. I feel like some of you may have that memorized at this point. We are submitting the following statement on behalf of the residents of Windsor Drive regarding the Kelp Farm project. We want to begin by saying thank you for your time, effort, and energy to listen to us. We realize that we probably resemble the itch that will not go away. We are not trying to be challenging or difficult. Given the amount of time we've all spent communicating our position, we hope you understand that the concerns we have continued to express come from a place of unease and apprehension regarding any future extension of Windsor Drive. We acknowledge that the opinions of the residents regarding a connection are in opposition of the initial goal of the planning board. Several residents and town leaders were able to have a virtual meeting last Wednesday, and we appreciate the time everyone took to attend. Following that meeting, I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Laura Robertson on the phone. We discussed a couple of ideas, and although we both agreed it was a brainstorming session with no strings attached, I did bring the ideas generated back to the neighborhood. We have spent considerable time talking amongst ourselves, discussing ideas that would abate our concerns, but also lend themselves to the improvement of the community. The ideas that we hope you consider include: 1, designating the adjoining land area up to the path and all additional green space as forever wild. 2, implementing a deed restriction that prohibits the further development of the area. 3, setting minimal easement requirements, if required, on either side of the path. 4, allowing a 10-foot wide paved surface with 2 feet of strong grass on either side in lieu of a 12-foot wide paved path in order to create a more environmentally friendly and aesthetically pleasing setting. This configuration would still allow for access by an emergency vehicle in the unlikely event that it is necessary. 5, whether it is 10 or 12 feet wide, we ask that you consider the removal of the stub at the end of Windsor Drive. This would eliminate a direct line of connectivity, prevent any reference to the same in future comprehensive plans, and facilitate goodwill towards the neighborhood. The stub removal would improve the environmental and aesthetic aspects of this new connecting multi-use path, and additionally, enhance the look of the entrance to that part of the bike path. We appreciate your considering the suggestions we are providing. Thank you for your patience, willingness to listen, and understanding as to why we continue to have concerns. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniela. And I also did note that Dan Fromowitz, the writer of the letter, also still wanted to speak. Dan?
Yes, assume everyone can hear me. Okay, thank you. This is a lot shorter than what you read before, so everyone can relax. I think I'm going to send what I'm reading in right now to the to the planning board, so you can send it around, send it to the builder, Mr. Basayan. Apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Dear Niskuna Town Planning Board, I'm Daniel Fromowitz, residing at 1010 Shannon Boulevard. On September 23rd, I submitted a letter that Laura read a few minutes ago, and that was representing myself and other 40 other households in the Avon Crest North development and the immediate surrounding area. Since the letter has now been read, I'd like to point out some things. Since I submitted that letter, I read the initial proposal to build the additional homes, which is listed later in tonight's agenda. Most neighbors I've spoken to are strongly opposed to replacing any current wooded area with homes in Avon Crest North. That being said, there are some factual errors in the builder's application for which I'd like to recommend corrections. In many cases, I believe errors or oversights were simply a result of the applicant not being as familiar with the neighborhood as are the residents living in or near Avon Crest North. As I point out the needed corrections, most strengthen the argument that the land is more valuable in its current, undeveloped, forested form. Some other corrections and also some factual statements made by the builder about the ages of trees identify the adverse environmental impact that development would cause. This suggests that a more extensive environmental impact review would be needed if the plan to subdivide were to proceed. My recommended corrections are the following. On agenda page 47, and again, I will send this all in, the top of the map has a strip labeled Most Holy Redeemer, shown diagonally opposite the bend in Shannon Boulevard. This is more accurately labeled the Land Conservancy, as shown both on the Leishkill Natural Area map and on the town zoning map, of which a portion is also shown on page 47. Additionally, the lots that propose homes, as you could see on that page, would not fit in with the current character of existing lots in the neighborhood. The proposed lots are 100 feet wide on Shannon Boulevard. The existing homes across the street on the east side of Shannon Boulevard have a minimum of 120 feet of frontage. Across from the width of just barely over 2 existing lots on Shannon Boulevard are 3 new proposed lots. The Avon Crest North development is in an R1 low-density residential zone. Our neighborhood is rather small, containing only 7 streets, with only 6 of them having any postal addresses. We have townhomes in the neighborhood, which from an aerial view seem to possibly exceed the R1 zoning limit of 25% area coverage by structures. The undeveloped areas around the neighborhood help push the average area coverage of the neighborhood back down to what is supposed to be allowed per property in an R1 zone. On agenda page 51, item A.2 says that after project completion, 1.5 acres of forested land will remain of the total of 3.89 acres. I believe the proposal has 0 acres of forested land remaining because on agenda page 53, item B1B says all 3.89 acres will be developed. Item A.5 says that none of the site has a slope of 15% or greater. From the application, I could compute the slopes because the contour lines are given every 2 feet, except for multiples of 10 feet, which are missing from the plan, but I can easily work around that omission. I could see from the contour lines that there are many local areas with slopes steeper than 15%. The steepest slope I see is at the northern end of Lot 1, which is at the northern end of the site, where in the vicinity of the closest lines, the slope is about 80%. In fact, much of Lot 1 has a slope of 20%. Lot 2 has some ridges with slopes of about 15% or greater. Lots 3 and 4, along their Shannon Boulevard edge, have a slope of around 40 to 50% according to the contour lines. But while walking along Shannon Boulevard, it looks in person like those portions of Lot 3 and 4 along Shannon Boulevard actually have a much steeper slope approaching 100%, a 45-degree angle. And I'm halfway done. Item A.10 asks if fishing opportunities exist in the fishing area. The application says no, but people do fish, sometimes parking in the short driveway on Route 7 on the west side of the project site to do so. Since it's not frequent, I could see how someone could have missed this. On agenda page 52, item A.11 asks about endangered or threatened animal life. Although I do not know if any are specifically threatened, I and my neighbors are witnesses to many types of wildlife that we have seen in or in the vicinity of the project site. These include deer, fox, possums, squirrels, chipmunks, raccoons, turkeys, woodpeckers, hawks, ducks, and bats. Item A.13 asks if the project site is currently used as an open space or recreation area. The application says no, but is explained in my September 23rd letter. The area is highly used by those living in and near the Avon Crest North development. This is mainly because the area was advertised as forever wild or open space to many residents, including to every single family near the project site on Shannon Boulevard. The grassy portion is used by people to walk their dogs and occasionally to pick berries. The wooded area is frequently by neighborhood kids to explore. Regardless of the veracity of the promised open space in multiple documents, existing Avon Crest North homes have already been elevated in value because of the existence of various grassy and wooded areas throughout the neighborhood. Item A.14 asks if the project site includes scenic views known to be important to the community. The application says no, but again, the scenic wooded area is highly appreciated and expected by neighbors and was a key reason for many people buying homes in Avon Crest North, including the case of my family. My September 23rd letter shows documentation, those are in the attachments that Laura has, shows documentation touting the woodlands as protecting our neighborhood for generations to come. Even a month ago, a neighbor I have seen only passing gave me a thumbs up as she was indicating to me how nice the woodlands looked across the street from me on the project site. Item A.15 asks about streams within or contiguous to the project area. The application correctly lists the Leishik. However, there is also a gully at the northern end of the property, starting near Shannon Boulevard, that runs very close to the property and drains to the Leishik. On agenda page 53, item A.17 asks if the site is served by existing public utilities. Technically, the application response of yes is correct. However, an important point is that all Avon Crest North utilities are buried underground, with the closest access points to proposed lots 1 through 3 being on the east side of Shannon Boulevard near existing homes. Adding natural gas, electric, cable, and/or phone connections would likely involve digging up existing developed property on the east side of Shannon Boulevard up to about 30 feet from the roadway to add service branches. My final comment is due to the unique conditions during the time of COVID-19. I have a high school student learning remotely. I also have a college student who will likely need to return for the end of the semester to study for and take finals remotely. I occasionally telework from home, and my wife occasionally teleworks from home to help school-age children. The disruption of tearing down trees at construction would have serious negative consequences, especially to my children's futures, which depend on them being able to concentrate at home, and to the children that my wife helps remotely via video conference. I want to thank everyone for the additional time. Turn things back over to you.
Danielle. So I don't have anybody specifically that requested to speak, but there are other people on the line. Does anybody else wish to speak under privilege of the floor?
I guess I would if no one's there. Can you hear me? This is Bruce Barash. Irene and I live next door to Dan on Shannon Boulevard, right across the street from the proposed development. I would like to corroborate essentially everything Dan said. We're already a little dismayed that someone has put up big, ugly posted signs right across the street from our house and our driveway. As Dan said, we were about the 4th or 5th house in the neighborhood, so we've been here 30 years. And right from the get-go, everyone was told that this was forever wild land, which obviously is very nice for us being right across the street. It would very much change the character of the entrance to the neighborhood and certainly our house. I'm certain it would have a deleterious effect on the value of our house when we try to sell it. And no question, I think Dan pointed out some of the inaccuracies in that document from the builder, but you know, the land is very much used by my kids when they were little and by other kids now and by adults. So I think we would feel very betrayed if that land across the street from us got developed after 30 years of you know, being under the impression that it was not ever to be developed.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
Okay,
Is there anybody else who wanted to speak? Oh, thanks, Kevin. Go ahead.
Okay, does anybody else want to speak? If not, thank you all for your comments and for anything that you submitted in writing. We do appreciate that. It does get circulated amongst the board members, so we do thank everyone. And we'll move on to the agenda. Okay. Okay. Unfinished business. No unfinished business tonight. We do have one item under new business. And under new business, we have a resolution 2020-31, a resolution for site plan approval for 2301 Knott Street, which is TD Bank. And as usual, I will summarize the resolution. Some parts of it is posted for everybody to see. So this is for change in signage at TD Bank. Section 220-48.4 signs E5 logo states, in the event that a picture logo is displayed on sign, it shall be incorporated into the permitted sign area to compromise not more than 30% of the sign area. The proposed sign identified in the sign plan drawing set as E02 and E03 include the logo TD that comprises 100% of the sign area. Therefore, a waiver of 70% of the sign area is required. So resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission has determined the proposed signage provided by Saxon Signs as shown on the 13-page drawing set entitled Site Recommendation, Book Niskayuna ID 8251, 2301 Knott Street East, Niskayuna, New York, by Image Resource, dated December 17th, 2019, and last revised September 21, 2020, which is attached hereto and made a part of hereof, would have a minimal negative effect on the aesthetics and compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood commercial zoning district, and therefore grants the above referenced waivers and improves said site plan. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution? A motion for approval by Mr. Khan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, looks like Mr. Laflamme beat you to the second. Thank you, Chris. Is there any discussion at all on this? I know we do have the applicant, representative of the applicant from Saxon Sign also. The only thing I guess I'd like to say is I appreciate the applicant, coming into conformance with the directional / monument signs. So the only thing that we required a waiver for was for the size of the TD. And since the logo is where the world is going or where TD Bank is going to just their logo, this is required for corporate identity, so I have no problem with the resolution. Does anybody else have any discussion or comments at all?
Yeah, I just want to say that I've seen it actually in TD banks across the area where it's been in this new format, and even I think, again, using a pop culture reference, watching the NBA playoffs, I even saw the TD logo as the new one as opposed to what's there now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oster. Anybody else have any comments? Any questions or comments from the applicant?
Nope, you pretty well summarized it pretty good.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, hearing no one else, Mr. Henry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Aye.
Mr. Screbutenis,
Aye.
Mr. Khan,
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin,
Aye.
Mr. Darpino,
Aye.
Mr. Oster,
Aye.
Chairman Walsh.
Aye. That's everybody, right? Okay, thank you. So the motion carries, the resolution's approved, the sign package is approved, so good luck, and we'll look forward to the new signage over at ShopRite Square, excuse me.
Well, thank you and have a good night.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it for new business tonight. Let's see, so we're gonna have some discussion items. First up under discussion is 2538 River Road, Kelts Farm, the average density development and major subdivision application. And we have a couple of project leads, Mr. D'Arpino and Mr. McPartlin. So I guess I'll turn it over to whoever would like to go first. And I know we have Joel is the applicant is online with us also. Anybody?
I can start by just kind of recapping briefly the meeting which I attended with Laura and the two fire chiefs of the respective fire districts that would serve different homes within this proposed subdivision. And my main takeaways were that the proposed multi-use path would be the preferred access point for emergency vehicles. Were they not able to use the River Road entrance, and were they not able to have a full road service? And also the provided 10-foot road width or multi-use path width is a little narrow, considering that snow removal often does not cover the entire width of the road, and so allowing a few extra feet for their apparatuses to pass in those winter months would be wise. So we talked a bit about options for blockading or designing the path, the multi-use path entrance from the portion of the multi-use path that terminates at the Windsor Road stub, Windsor Drive stub, and it sounds like they're really indifferent whether it's a gate or a bollard or a grass pad or any combination of those. So I think that pretty much covers it. There are also a few minor changes in this latest revision to the plan that I can summarize, but essentially it's just minor resizing of a few lots on the cul-de-sac, and to bring them more in closer to the average lot size and create a little more open space around the multi-use path, as well as slightly redrawing the property lines near the south side of Kelts Farm Road at the entrance off river to work around the 25-foot buffer of the wetlands, which will remain at that part of the site. I don't know if David or Laura, you want to jump in on any
No,
other
Thank you, Patrick.
updates.
I don't know if David, you have something you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I think that the the 12-foot wide path is good. I think this bike path is going to get quite a bit of use. So extending it from a 10-foot wide path to a 12-foot wide path, I think would be prudent. It also does help with the emergency accessibility that the departments do want. I am opposed to having any type of gravel or anything on either side of that. I think that that's a very temporary means. After a year or so, it becomes a maintenance problem and will just get grown over with weeds. The only other suggestion I would make is that where the path parallels the stub road is to maybe move it over slightly so that there's more of a buffer between the edge of the stub road so somebody doesn't inadvertently mistaken this as a road. And not that I'm a huge fan of gates or barricades, but with either a patch of strong grass or some type of plantings that could be put along the stub road to delineate the difference between the two. I think that would be a little bit more beneficial. I think right now that probably scales out at less than 3 feet between the edge of the stub road and the multi-use path. But all the other things that Mr. McPartland touched on and the changes to the latest plan, I think are good.
Okay, thank you, David. And I know we got Joel online, but if I try to pull up the map, Laura, I know I have it. I'll probably lose something here because my computer's slowing down quite a bit. But I believe the latest revision that we have does show a 12-foot multi-purpose path.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
I know
Yeah.
that, can you guys see it? So,
Yep.
Oops, darn it. There. That's it. So, I just like to follow up with Patrick's, just so we're all looking at it. Like lot 14 was originally a home that kind of sat here on the open water, and then it got removed, and then that was potentially to be dedicated as open space to the town of Niskuna, but it's not very usable open space. It doesn't serve a public purpose, and it can also cause kind of problems. Like if the town doesn't maintain it as a lawn, but we don't really want to be mowing people's lawns. So he ended up just putting the lot line right through that so that it's shared and privately owned, which I think is good. And then I still think that these homes can shift over a little bit more, but that's entirely up to you guys. And then I just wanted to let you know, I know that the last time that you guys talked about removing the stub, you really weren't in favor, but I really recommend doing so. I think that there's advantages to like right now, the multi-use path is over in the grass and you would have to remove trees and vegetation to put the multi-use path over there. But I met with some of the residents and they had, I thought, a really good idea, which would be you could remove some of the asphalt on the stub, but use some of that stub already to make the multi-use path. So you're not damaging any vegetation or messing up any of the grass, and you're using the existing sub base, which I think is a really good use of the materials that are already there. And then you can also have the path sweep a little bit nicer, and then you can plant trees on either side. And I mean, we're adding a lot of impervious surface to the area right now. So any impervious that we can remove, I think, is really beneficial. And I also think that I agree with David DiArpino that this is going to be a heavily used trail. And so if we can make the entrance to this trail look really inviting, like bring some lupins over, plant some trees, maybe even put like a bench or two, I think it benefits everybody rather than having a stub that's just kind of sitting there collecting, not trying to be mean, but basketball hoops and maybe cars. It's just not really a good place for cars to be wandering down. I really think that we should reconsider. I think that I talked to the developer. He's willing to recycle that pavement and use it in the building of the path later on. And I think that we have a chance to make it look a lot more aesthetically pleasing if we redo that area a little bit.
Hey, Laura, this is Mike. Is the stub a municipal dedicated street? Wouldn't this require town board approval to remove a municipal dedication?
It does, and I brought it up at my economic development committee, and they were interested in supporting that.
So where would we initiate this? Would that initiate at the town board level, or this would come as an advisory recommendation from the planning board?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, done jointly. I think if the planning board is amenable to looking at, paths that take the place of the stub, and you guys are all on board with that, we could forward that onto the town board. I do think that they're willing to follow through with what needs to be done to get rid of that stub.
So Laura, I just want to, communicate what my understanding was, and the drawing actually depicts it. So right now, the application in front of us ends at the bike path drawing that's there. I think we were considering anything to do with the stub as a separate action. However, if we all feel we want to roll it into this action, and Joel will adjust his drawings and show what remains of the stub as you described, Laura, that gets connected to the multi-use path, then I think we can make a recommendation to the town board to have the stub, whatever remains of it, be used as the entranceway into the multi-use path. But from my perspective, I just need to see what it looks like in the drawings.
Yes, and the way it's laid out now, there's the grass pad for emergency vehicle to go down to the stub and then get on to the access the multi-purpose walkway, right? So we also have to consider snow removal. How does that going to play out in any design or changes to make sure that that's kept clear so that an emergency access vehicle can get to that point where it shows as, I believe, a hard grass pad right now, right where Laura has her cursor there. So
one of the advantages of not disturbing this is, one, you're not adding more impervious and you're not disturbing this area, but you can sweep it and start the path like here, or wherever makes the most sense. This is actually an interesting area. I literally just walked there at lunchtime. I mean, this is kind of a nice road that goes over to the wetland detention pond that was built for Windsor Drive. And so initially I was thinking you don't necessarily even need this strong grass here, because probably an emergency access vehicle could pop onto it here. I actually don't think, you need another one. This is a very nice paved, very strong entrance right here. You could, whatever you want, whatever you do there though, I mean, this is what we talked about, and this is what David DiArpino was touching on, is that you don't want to make it inviting for cars to drive. So, I mean, I would love to not do a bollard or a gate. Maybe you can, if you do things with grass and trees and you do more of a sweeping curve, which is still better. So this curve here is a little bit tight for the emergency vehicles. But if you take it out into the pavement and then come back, it might be easier.
Hey, Laura, this is Joel. I walked it with the residents today at 5, and my only concern is I said I'd be willing to recycle the pavement, from the stub, but if you look at the catch basins, there's a catch basin on Briar Ridge. You see the one right there, and then look at the one on Windsor up to the right. Okay.
Oh, this one here. Yeah.
If we took the stub out, I wouldn't be willing to resculpt Windsor and Briar, to have the water that's coming down Windsor go over to that Briar Ridge catch basin, because now it currently goes down to the stub, to those two catch basins at the end of the stub. So I would recycle the stub, but I really don't want to come in and rebuild the end of Windsor and Briar Ridge.
Like stormwater.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's workable.
If the town, we have to dig up the pavement to make that sewer connection right there in the Windsor and Briar, right there. Okay, I mean, we have to dig it up. But I mean, if we could reach some kind of agreement, the town would work with me to, repave that area. We can make the water coming down Windsor go over to that drain, that catch basin on Windsor. And that catch basin on Windsor, by the way, just connects up and dumps onto Kelch Farm anyway. So
Yeah, that's my understanding.
I just don't want to add at my fence another catch basin, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, and we're also going to need, obviously, this is a change, something that town engineering would have to make sure that they provide their buy-in or comments, Mr. Yetto, or so on and so forth.
Yeah, and the one other thing too that I agree with the residents, Laura, is that I would have my surveyor, if you could pop up map back up again, survey like the point where our bike path hits the edge of our property, and that there's 3 or 4 very large, nice oak trees in that area. And you talked about that S-shaped curve, on the going through the stub road to make that turn less severe, which is a great idea. And then I'd almost like the field route right there. I'd like the field route, the bike path across my property to miss all those mature trees, miss them as much as possible. Because I walked and I looked where our buffer line is there, okay? And I think that we could field route the bike path through there to miss a lot of those trees. Because a lot of people are concerned about the canopy, and losing the mature canopy.
And we still be able to do that, Joe, and satisfy the fire chiefs as far as clearance for vehicles in the overhead and on the sides?
I think so, Kevin, because I walked where the blue wetlands lines were, okay? And I didn't step off the 25-foot buffer. So I almost think that if you could put your cursor where the path touches the edge of the property line, right there, Laura, I think we might miss all those trees anyways, where that is. I just have to have my surveyor survey that point for me, okay? Or I can scale it off the drawing and measure over to it from the stuff.
Yeah,
I'll do that. I'll measure over from.
Really nice trees. Like this, there's a whole line of them right through here. And like these ones over here, I think are obviously pretty safe because that's going to be the open space. And this is actually a nice chunk of habitat. I was looking at it today. It's pretty impressive. I like it a lot. But yeah, the trees, they're big, beautiful oak trees and a big sugar maple. And they're like right here. And anything we can do to preserve them, because they're a natural windbreak. They're a natural line of trees. They're nice.
All right, but the key thing is, Laura and Joel, we need to make sure the emergency access gets maintained, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Emergency access is number one. But if we can do emergency access and keep the trees, you know how I am.
No,
one other thing too is the town. I would kind of request that the town maintains or mows that property so we can get a clearer view of where the paths go. I mean, that isn't a retention basin. It isn't wetlands, delineated wetlands. What is it? I mean, can the town cut some of those weeds, Laura? So we can get a better feel for it. Because people are thinking that there's no good trees in that area. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think there are good trees out there. I can look at it again. I don't think that there's been a wetland delineation. Just looking at the species, just anecdotally, some of them are pretty good wetland indicators. So I do think we have to be a little careful over there. We can double check it.
Check the wetlands map from the Windsor development, and that's not delineated. It's not a wetland. And it's not a retention basin for Windsor. It's just, I don't even know what it is. It was just land dedicated to the town.
Yeah, I agree. I researched it. It's definitely not part of the detention pond that's fenced in. But it is interesting because there is kind of like a berm that sort of separates it from the Celts farm. I don't know exactly what the history of it is, but I think that the big trees are really beneficial to maintain, and just making that whole area look nicer would be good.
Okay. I'm on board with missing those trees.
Okay. Let me summarize in my head what I've heard is that we're maintaining a 12-foot wide multi-purpose walkway. Right, where we come out, we have the sharp right-hand angle out to the Windsor stub. We're going to eliminate that, utilize existing pavement, and try to meander that through in such a way that it looks good, still allows for emergency access, and meets all the requirements of the fire department, the 12-foot and no overhead or side obstruction, so a vehicle can get down. Is that where we're at for the board?
Yes, from my standpoint.
And there's only one additional thing. We need to make an assessment of, by connecting the multi-use path to the stub, given that the stub is at the end of a road, what exactly we're going to do to a vehicular road. I'm not a big proponent for gates either. So is there a way to get that to happen without cars driving onto the path?
I think,
Laura, people have voiced their feelings, and I'll just go on record as saying I am a proponent of one bollard right in the middle of the path. It stands out. It's not obstructive to any pedestrian or bicycle traffic, and there's a precedent for it elsewhere in town.
Sure.
There are several
I could
points on
live with it. To just, it looks.
Yeah, you say bollard, it's like a bump bollard so that the emergency vehicle can tap it and it drops down so they can drive over it, that kind, right?
No, I understand what it is. It's
There's at the intersection of the bike path and Aqueduct. There's such a bollard, also a bollard like that at the entrance to the bike path near the bottom of the hill at GE Research.
Yep.
Heading toward the fields.
Yeah, Mr. Khan, I know you're familiar with those. I just wanted to make sure everybody heard, that's all.
Yep.
And understood.
One last thing from Joel too is that, we moved that lot 14, Laura, and we moved all the houses around and we made more green space around the path. But I never agreed to split rail fencing around the buffer. I'm adamantly opposed to that because it goes against the spirit of the wetlands buffer. I mean, you want to try to maintain something in like a wilderness area, green space area, and then you're going to put up an ugly old split rail fence. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. I'm totally against split rail fences, and I'd like to see an example where anywhere else in town, another developer or builder has ever put up a split rail fence. I've never seen a split rail fence around a buffer in Indiana. So, to try to get me to try to force me to follow the supposed law and not to force any other developer, I mean, that's not going to fly. Believe me. I won't do it.
Oh, it's a really good question. We went through it a lot on the Harmon Grove subdivision. And it was actually written right into the resolution. And it was, I would say, like most of the board members that talked about the fence being on the 25-foot buffer are still on the planning board, or all of them. And it's actually a point of contention on Harmon Grove right now. So like they agreed to the fence being on the 25-foot buffer, and they're struggling with putting the fence on the 25-foot buffer. And so I said this before, I don't know if you heard me at the last meeting, but the planning board has come out now consistently putting the split rail fence on the 25-foot buffer. And if we were going to change on this subdivision, I think we would probably have to retroactively go back to some of the other ones that were forcing the fence on the 25-foot buffer right now and reevaluate, because we do have to be fair. And I mean, it is definitely a burden to, the way that you use the yard, but the intent is to keep that area, away. So like if you make it lawn and you start putting lawn chemicals on it and you start, then all of those things are getting into the wetland. Whereas if you keep it as a buffer, an actual buffer with the fence on the buffer, then you have that 25 feet before anything's getting into the water, getting into the wetland. So I would definitely say that it's not just this development. There's, it's pretty prominent development right now that's struggling with it. And so if the planning board was to make a change, I think they would have to, my recommendation is make sure that's fair. Because you can't apply it on one development, not the other.
Wait, let me speak, Laura. I mean, you're saying that the only other development in town is Harmon Grove, which is a brand new development, and they haven't put them in yet, by the way. Okay, so there is no precedent. No one's put in a split rail fence yet.
None of those homes have final COs, and they can't get one without one. And it's not just Harmon Grove. I think Anthony Crusoe did a subdivision on St. Mark's.
The St. Mark's subdivision.
Yeah, there's a couple more.
Hey, Joel, I'm sorry. This is Jengus. I thought we had gotten past this from the last meeting.
Honestly, we haven't.
It's obvious by the conversation now we haven't
So,
gotten past it. But what's your most major objection?
I'm against the concept of a split rail fence. I think they're ugly, and it's against the definition of trying to keep something wild and looking nice. I mean, so you're gonna come in and first off, you put in a 25-foot buffer, which is excessive, all right? And now you're gonna put up a onerous split rail fence, man. That's just so ugly.
Well, Joel, I would be curious to hear from you. You know, you've heard Laura's concerns about protecting that buffer. What would you propose as an effective deterrent from the inevitable creep of a homeowner's lawn maintenance routine into the wetland?
Enforcement. Okay? I mean, I can show you, Patrick, okay? I'm biting my lip not to mention the name of the subdivisions, okay? But, you know, there's subdivisions where I've bought lots off other builders, they're developers. And they're delineated wetlands. They were all rip-rap stone. And then the second or third buyer of the house came in, took out all the rip-rap, all the stone, brought in truckloads of fill and topsoil and sod, beautiful landscape lawns now. You know, I brought it up to the building department, and nothing was done about it. So, you know, who's to say that somebody can't come in and knock a split rail fence down? If the building department is not going to enforce it, if I was a homeowner, I'd say, who the heck? But you know, why did Bezoin put up this ugly to take it down? You know, and then then what's the town going to do? They didn't enforce other builders take it out rip rap it, bringing in truckloads of fill. I mean, I'll put a split rail fence up, but to me, it's ugly. And why would you put up a split rail fence on the town's property? By the way, if the town can't enforce their own buffer, I mean, who's going to, you know? Like, look at that major buffer, Laura, next to the bike path. So we're going to put this beautiful bike path in. You're concerned about the open space around the bike path, and then where that curve is, maybe 5-10 feet away from the bike path, you want a split rail fence up?
I think the split rail fence is just for the residents so that they don't backfill, so it's delineated for the homeowner.
Yeah, we're talking about a split rail fence on the properties, right?
So
yeah,
so maybe we can do this. So I mean, you know, as Laura mentioned, it sounds like it's a troubling implementation to prevent creepage into the wetlands or buffer area. So I mean, we can carry it for an open item because we're still early on in the approvals. And let's take a look over at Harmon Grove. Maybe Laura, we can get together and go on over there and see what's going on. And you know, again, solutions. If we have a solution that we can prevent a future problem, I don't know if enforcement is the whole solution. I don't want to put that burden on the code enforcement personnel without at least some buy-in there. So let's see what alternatives are that to satisfy everybody. I don't know if there is such a thing, but I'm willing to work on it to see if we can come up with something, you know.
But if there's no enforcement, what stops somebody from taking down a rail fence?
I understand, Joel. That's why I'm willing to, see what other options
I
are
mean,
out
it's
there.
an explicit structural communication of the intent.
You know,
And Laura,
I mean,
in all honesty, in Almond Grove thing, I'm
it could
with
show it
Chairman
on the
Walsh.
site plan, right, on the lot. It could say right here, but again, who looks at their lot and says, oh, I can't do anything back there, as time goes on, like you said, Joel, it's like, geez, I'm going to want to improve my lawn and bring some fill in, and it just recurs. Somehow I'm going to prevent that. Somehow. I don't know the
Yeah,
answer
like-
right now.
I agree, Kevin. Like, if there's some other way that we can figure it out, great. But I can tell you that when we just require that the wetlands be recorded to the plot plans and not disturbed, extremely difficult to figure out and find. It's not like our guys go around with individual plot plan maps, like looking at people's backyards to see if they're maintaining their wetlands. Putting the buffer on the wetland is a little bit more of an indicator that the wetland is there. But again, the yards do typically tend to, creep up, and you're putting sheds in the buffer, you're putting trampolines, you're putting chemicals on your lawn in the buffer. It starts to become, a much more gray area if you put the split rail fence on the buffer. I'm not saying people, won't try and get away with what they can. We certainly do try to enforce. It may not be perfect, but if we do know that somebody has gone beyond the buffer and they do try and come get a building permit, do something, we definitely follow up. It's the strongest and it's the easiest to enforce when the split rail fence is supposed to be on the buffer. If there's another good idea, happy to hear it, but definitely the split rail fence is the best from an enforcement perspective.
And I'll
Well, at
know,
least it's
started the
on the
requirement
property.
because we did have it.
Go ahead, Ms.
There's lots
Gold.
of issues.
Ms. Gold, you have something for us?
Yeah, I said we started the requirement quite a number of years ago because we did have issues with people going into that area and treating it as their own property and not taking care of it the way it's supposed to be. Certainly, if the developer wants to put a nicer looking fence and split rail, I don't think anybody would argue with that. But split rail is relatively inexpensive, and that's how we got to that. I have a couple of questions, whether you want them now or after Joel gets to speak again. I don't care, but I do have a couple questions.
I suggest you go ahead. It's a good time.
Okay. Looking at the latest drawing, there's the multi-use pathway going across several driveways, with a small strip of green space between that and the roadway. Whose responsibility is maintenance of that going to be?
For mowing, you talking about?
Mowing, paving, snow removal, etc. And whose liability if something happens?
So I think it's fairly typical for a multi-use path across a driveway. It's all within a right of way, and so it is town liability for the path to be in the right of way. And on the multi-use path on Knott Street, we do plow and maintain it, and so I think the intent would be that we would continue, just bring the plow thing down this. So it would be maintained by the town. Crossing the driveways in the right of way is still, because actually, even if it crosses the driveway and goes onto private property, the town will get an easement. So we essentially don't build these things without them being owned, maintained by the town. If that helps.
Mm-hmm.
That clarifies it. I thought that might be the case, but I want to be sure. The other thing is we've been talking about emergency vehicles using multi-use pathway in case of emergency and they can't access the road itself. My question is, what about the residents needing to get to or from their homes? What are they supposed to do? Are they going to have the same access to the multi-use
No.
pathway?
It wouldn't be.
No, then there's a problem.
Well, I think that, Kevin, jump in here, but I think that the reason that we typically look at the emergency access, and this is what Patrick and I talked about with the fire chiefs, is it's unlikely, but sometimes if there was a large structural fire and they needed to call in help because their apparatus are so large, they, sometimes just parking two of them the way that they need to fight the fire cuts off additional assistance. And that's when they would say, can you work around? Can you go through? Can you use the bike path to bring in some more equipment to help them fight? It's a very unusual situation. But I think that if there was a blockage to the road for any amount of time, it's, the emergency responders and the town of Niskayuna's responsibility to clear that, in the same manner and, with the understanding that if a giant ice storm comes through in, 100 years and there's beautiful, I don't think we're going to plant silver maples, but let's just say silver maples because everybody knows what they look like. There's giant silver maples that, fall down across the road. I mean, that's typical of what happens kind of anywhere. And the town will clean them up as quickly as they can. And, if there's an emergency on that road that requires somebody to be evacuated from their home, then again, the emergency vehicles might be able to utilize that existing thing. But the residents themselves, it would be very atypical for them to be using an emergency access.
But if there's a blockage of their roadway, you've only got one of them, what will they do? And you don't know what might happen. And I say that because I've been in town since I was 2.5. I remember a couple times when the boulevard in Avon Crest was blocked off. I don't know for how long, but I remember seeing it totally blocked off. And people want to get to their homes. Sometimes they need to get out of their homes. There needs to be some provision for that, and I don't see this plan doing that. And I'm concerned partly for their welfare, partly for the town liability and all of that. Granted, it's not going to happen often, but still that's part of the point of connectivity, that people would not be barricaded out of their homes, barricaded in that way.
So I know we struggle sometimes when we're talking about emergency accesses with what ifs. And so I just want to be a little careful going down the what if path. But I do want to say that, if it comes to life safety emergency, literally, let's say that, there's a wildfire on Blatnick Park, coming across River Road, nobody is going to stop cars from driving down a multi-use path to get over. I mean, if it's a life emergency, but I'm just saying, as far as what ifs go in the crystal ball, it's not a road. I know that we all wanted it to be a road. I wanted it to be a road. It's not a road. So I don't think that you could go out there and say, this is emergency access, and if these cars ever needed to use it, they could. If somebody's, if the emergency becomes so extreme, if you can fit a 9-foot wide emergency vehicle down it, you can sure as heck fit cars to get down it if they need to. But I don't think that we want to engineer it like that. And I think that we want to stick to emergency accesses to be for trained personnel to get in when they need to. And then, the kind of crazy scenarios that do happen, I think, human beings are very resourceful and can find ways, but we don't necessarily engineer subdivisions all that way.
Thanks, Laura. I agree with that.
Strategy.
Thanks, Laura. I agree with that. So, I mean, as far as where we're at here, it sounds like, again, like I summarized earlier, some changes up at the stub road and, making it so that the emergency vehicles can still meander down there without the heavy right-hand turn. And Joel, you can clean that up. I know you got that in your head, what you need to do there. Split rail fence, we'll have to come through it. I'd like to, get over to Harmon Grove and take a look and maybe meet with Laura to see what's going on over there, to see maybe what, maybe they have some suggestions, that we're not aware of. So it doesn't hurt to keep talking about it, but we need to do something. All right. And so that's an open item we're going to have to carry. As far as the rest of the site plan goes, and Mr. McPartland or Mr. DiArpino can jump in here, but I think we're there. And I think we're getting, to the point where, we're ready to say, do we have to have an approval to start engineering, Laura? Or we just say we're close enough so that the applicant can move forward?
I think we can just say we're close enough. If you guys are generally okay with the lot layouts, the open space, we can actually kind of figure out where the multi-use path goes with engineering. So, I mean, if you guys feel like we're pretty close, I think it's okay to say this meets the intent of the subdivision. We still have a decent amount of details that we have to work out, how the stormwater works, exactly where the bike path's going to go, what trees we can save, all that kind of work. But that really is the detail work. So if you're generally okay with where the sketch plan is landing, if you think it meets the intent of what we forwarded to the town board and what they forwarded back to us, it's probably time to start the engineering.
Yep.
Yeah, we are engineering, Kevin. We're just filling in a lot of survey data right now to do the detailed engineering. But Laura, if you, I, Ray, and Matt can get together, at the end of the stub, so we could talk out details, okay? If you could set that up, I'm around all week.
Okay, I can set that up.
And Laura, if you do set up a meeting, please invite Patrick and Mr. DiArpino and myself, and it'd be nice to have a planning board member there, as always.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if Ray doesn't mind, I'll bring a can of spray paint, and we can actually paint our path on the road, okay? And that way I can send my surveyors over to mark it off too.
I'll ask him. I don't have a great
If we agree on 12,
the town roads, but I will ask him.
No, sure, Laura, if you're the one doing the spray painting, no one's gonna mind.
Joe, did you?
It's probably the opposite of that.
Joe, did you have a question?
yeah, do we agree upon 12 feet with
That's what I
no
heard.
gravel? Okay, great.
So that's what I heard, and I'll be honest with you. I did participate in the public discussion the other day, and I do have a problem with gravel, and it never stays where you put it, and it turns into a mess, especially if you're mowing or maintaining. Take a look at the new rotary at the end of Rosendale and River here, end of River and Rosendale. They did put some crusher run along the road, and it's all ends up in the road sooner or later. Same with the bike path, So
I agree.
I think I think that's messy. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Anything else, Joe, or questions for the applicant, or anything that we've missed that we need to discuss on this project? No? All right, Joe, you all say you got direction?
Yeah, I'll have Tony make the changes, and Laura, myself, Matt, and Ray, somebody with a spray paint can, we'll try to rough it out, and then we can get the surveyors over there to the market, right?
Right, and we'll follow up again, the split rail fence. I know you don't like it, but unless there's a creative idea that solves the problem, right now that's where we're at, and we'll talk some more about that. We'll maybe see what's going on over at Harmon Grove, okay?
One last thing too, I wanted to impress upon with the neighbors too, is that when we do remove that stub road, that I had told Laura that I would scoop up the lupin fields and spread it out, as the topsoil in that area, and they're pretty hardy. I've moved some piles around and on the site, and they actually grew. So that area would remain wild. In other words, the town's not going to come in and mow it as like a lawn, And that way, when you're coming down Windsor too, that kind of discourages somebody from thinking it's a path, a driving path, because it's going to be a wild area, Do you agree, Laura?
Yeah, I would definitely like to see lupins. I think trees. I think you have to manicure a little bit around the bike path. But you know what I was thinking? I don't know if we have to start it at 12 or if we can ramp it up to 12, because I think 12 might invite cars. But if we do start it at 12 and we put the bollard in the middle of it, it may be helpful as long as you can still, because the bollards have pins and the emergency vehicles can take them down, is you might want to put like 2 landscaping boulders or 2 trees or something on either side, so that, because it's pretty wide open, so that you don't just have a bollard in the middle, you actually have kind of 2 sides so that the cars couldn't just drive around the bollards if we do feel like we need to do something like that. And then, if you might even be able to put something cool there, like a little sign that says, Bladnock Park Trail or Kilt Farm Trail or something. You could do something really nice at the beginning.
We can, but I want to just throw this out there now. But I mean, the existing path is 8 foot, and looking at the path, it's hard for me not to think that an emergency vehicle couldn't get down an 8-foot path even. I mean,
well, they said their apparatus are 9 feet, so in the winter.
I mean, the residents are for 10.
Well, we heard from the fire chiefs. Mr. McPartland stated, believe they want it 12 to 14. We're going with the minimum.
All right.
So I think it's, given the nature of this project, can we get Chief Lingelfelter and the other chief to just put that in writing and put it on the record?
What's that, Mr. Khan? I couldn't hear you.
I was saying, could we get the fire chiefs to just put that in writing and put it on the record?
Yeah, I think they actually have, but if they haven't,
Okay.
I will
Yeah,
get them to do it.
It's good for the future, you know.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? All right,
So if you,
thanks, Joel, and we'll move on. We'll put you right back on the stage here in a second. And thank you, everybody. All right, so it brings us to 2627 Troy Road. And I know we've heard from the privilege of the floor, some concerns. And when I saw the letter from, I've got your name right here, Mr. Fromowitz, you know, I had some concerns obviously about open space / parkland. And usually we hear of concerns, you know, from residents that a real estate agent told me this, but not only did Mr. Fromowitz have the concerns, but he actually had copies of the original flyer from Avon Crest North that showed. So I asked Laura in the planning department, Laura, Mr. Henry, to try to pull as much data history on this so we can see what happened here and understand whether, you know, is it, you know, open space? Was it open space? You know, what happened? So quite a bit of work they did today, and I think it's best, Laura, you know, I could try to summarize, but I think you did all the research, you and Clark, so one of you guys could probably best talk about a little bit about the history of where we're at with open space along Shannon Boulevard.
Yeah, Clark, if you wanna summarize what your research was, and then I'll just tag on with anything additional that I noticed, but you did the bulk of the research. So if you just wanna summarize what you found, I think that'd be great.
That's okay. Go ahead. I'm okay with you doing it.
Okay, well then correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Okay. So what we understood, and we went through quite a bit of files, and there certainly was a lot of back and forth on this, was that, you know, in 1986, 84, 85, in there, Avon Crest North went through, it was a planned unit development. It had a special use permit from the town board. And at that time, the overall subdivision plan did show open space as owned by the developer adjacent to Shannon Boulevard, as indicated in those. Let me just share my screen. Well, I don't know if I can. And then during
the builder did not own that property though.
No, actually, we think he did. So from our research, we definitely think that he did. And then when section 2 or 3 came along, the developer, and this is, you know, we found records of kind of this land transaction, and some of the wording was interesting. Like Claire can jump in here. I'm pretty sure it said that they inadvertently sold the land to the Kriegers during the time that it was being developed. And so then they came back to the planning board and they said, you know, we have enough open space. Can we remove this 15,000 square feet that we inadvertently sold to the Kriegers? And I think that explains the two letters when I think the planner at the time was Diane Sturman, and she said no both times. And then so what ended up happening was that they swapped. So there's 15,000 square feet on the north of the Krieger property that the Kriegers ended up deeding to the developer and incorporating it into the open space. And then that land that had originally shown on 1987 along Shannon Boulevard was taken out of the open space. And that approval did go through planning board. It did go through town board. And then an amended subdivision was filed. So I think that probably everybody's a little bit right. And it's, of course, an extremely frustrating situation. It happened a long time ago, but I mean, I think it's very clear that the development material showed as open space. But when the, you know, PUDs and major subdivisions and things, they do change a little bit from preliminary to final. When this thing did actually finally go to final and have so it's interesting because they originally had off of Dublin 3 cul-de-sacs. And as part of this, developer came back and said, I'm not going to build this 3-prong cul-de-sac. He removed a bunch of the townhomes and then did an arc and put the townhomes on the side of the arc. So, I mean, there was definitely some changes that came with final subdivision and included changing where the open space was. The total square footage was not reduced, but the location of it was changed. And we have a map that I can put on the screen if you guys want to see where it flip-flopped.
Laura, I think it would be really helpful if you pulled up that map.
Put it on there. Okay, let me, and Clark, maybe add while I'm just making sure I have it on my computer to pull up.
Sure. So just kind of reiterating what Laura said, when you see this map, there's an area in orange that was definitely labeled as open space in the beginning. And then there's correspondence that we have all gathered that says that was, and it's worded exactly like this, inadvertently sold to the Krieger parcel. And then you can see this happens right around 1990. And then you can see on the next revision of the map, you can see that that area that is highlighted in orange is no longer labeled open space. It's been absorbed into the Krieger property. And there's an equally, almost to the square foot area highlighted in yellow that is now open space. And they say that makes sense because it's contiguous with the green area that's outlined there, which is open space, and it abuts right up to the conservation property at the bottom of the highlighted area. So you can see the orange kind of in the middle right of the screen where her pointer is. That's what was originally open space. You can see it labeled right in the middle there. And that was inadvertently sold to the property at the bottom, the Krieger property, and the yellow area right in the middle of the screen is what becomes open space. Because the correspondence is very clear that they don't want a reduction in open space. If that was inadvertently sold, then they wanted some equal square footage added to the open space. And this is what goes through, and there's evidence of a resolution being passed, and you'll see in the next version of the drawing that the orange area is no longer open space. So that's what we found today.
Who owns the area shaded in purple?
The Nature Conservancy.
Okay. And to your knowledge, is this an access point to the Nature Conservancy?
It does go all the way to the Leishakill Nature Conservancy, but that was kind of like what we were talking about. Is it would be great if we could make this a kind of a formal access to the Leishakill, but we obviously have to coordinate it. It certainly leads you to the Leishakill lands, but the Nature Conservancy doesn't have any dedicated path on that side of the Leishakill.
The green area is town area.
Green is town, purple is Nature Conservancy. Orange was original open space that was then traded during final kind of PUD subdivision for this yellow.
So the yellow and the green, both town.
Or now single property that's owned by the town. It's actually a park district. It's Park District number 9. So the town maintains it, but the property owners, all the Shannon Boulevard and the Dublin Drive, have a list of everybody who pays into the park district. So they actually pay to maintain that open space.
Laura, am I allowed to ask a question?
Typically, no.
All right, I'll let you another time. That's fine.
I mean, it's up to the chairman, but typically, no.
Chairman Walsh, you're muted.
Yeah, and I apologize because if we start that, then we get into lots of discussion outside of, with the public. So if you have Mr. Fromwitz, is it? Please write down any questions you have. I know that you're going to send us your comments tonight and concerns with the EAF form. I appreciate that. And
okay,
again,
I can wait. That's fine. Thank you.
And I tell you, tonight's the first night that a lot of us are talking about this. I saw it earlier, and there've been some research done already because. Like I said, your submittal letter, especially showing the real estate agent's open space, which coincides with the orange on the map that Laura's got up there. So I want to understand what happened here, and obviously, something did happen. And I don't know if you were aware of it when it did happen or not. But the other question I had while I'm rambling here was for the planning officer for Joel. We don't have an overlay of your proposed subdivision. I just want to ensure that the new open space is outside of the proposed subdivision.
Oh yeah, I do. It's on there. Laura can pop it up.
But it's outside of anything that you're developing. You don't own that, right?
Right.
Right. So there's no
Laura,
conflict.
Yeah, I can. It's just he's got a certified map. I'll pull it up. Hold on. I just feel like people don't necessarily want to see all of the screens that I have open, but you kind of have to sometimes. Okay. Oops. This one.
Hey, Laura and Clark, just a question. You've used the adjective inadvertently a couple of times. Any color on how that might have occurred?
No.
We have no idea how this inadvertent transfer might have happened.
I don't know that you can have an inadvertent land transfer. Like, that's just my opinion.
Exactly. I mean, that's your characterization. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. So Michael, thanks for asking that question. It's one of the first questions that I have. What exactly does that mean?
I want to make a proposal.
I mean, I don't really know. There is a couple memos in the file. Like Clark found the one where they said it. I mean, the developer essentially said it was inadvertently transferred. I mean, you can't inadvertently transfer something, but I think that there was Marion Krieger at the time was the person that was living there, and it was her son Guy Krieger, and they had said that they had a handshake deal on where the open space was going to be, but they had never formally said okay. And so there was some back and forth between them and the land developer and how to use their land. And, it was, I think it was involved. It was a large folder about it. And it was a decent amount of the folder was portioned to this change in open space. So it was definitely looked at, but how the exact transfer took place and why some of that is, reading between the lines. And like Clark and I use that word because it kind of cracked us up. Like, I don't know that you can have an inadvertent land sale. I don't think you can.
And I guess just to throw what again, Chairman Walsh, to your point, I know this is the first time we're seeing it, and also for the residents who brought it up, given that there was that document. I mean, so is Century 21 legally liable for false advertising? They're still around, right? They're still in business.
No,
I wouldn't think so. I don't know how long that lasts.
I guess. Just to kind of close out what we found, after the map is changed, so that orange triangle is changed from open space to being part of the Krieger property, there are transactions between the town of Niskayuna planner and the developer saying your map that you're using, your advertisement that you're using is incorrect. Please change it. So there is correspondence requesting that be changed.
Okay.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. That answers that question.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing, and hopefully the residents at the time, whoever was living there, were made aware of what was going on. Again, 1990-ish is what we're talking about here, from what I saw today. Before I was on the board, several years before I was on the board.
Right, but it's clear, Chairman Walsh, that as that property passed hands, right, the current residents have a very different expectation.
Yeah, and so you can understand where the current residents are coming from. Obviously, when you bought into something and you say it's off open space, and turns out it's given back to and modified, but it was modified appropriately with planning board action, with town board resolutions, etc. I give credit to the previous planner not to give in and give up on open space. At least they got an equivalent amount at a good location. May not satisfy the neighbors, but we still got the open space. So basically, and I'll turn it over to Joel in a second here. But we have an application for a good sized lot for a major subdivision, 1 existing home and 4 new residences. First time we're seeing it. So we have to, ensure that, it's going to work. And then we're going to have to follow the code. It's on the Niskayuna ordinance in order to give the developer the opportunity to develop it and take it through the process. That's all we can do.
Yeah. And Chairman Walsh, is there any, is this a legal question? But whether this can be subdivided at all?
Yeah. So Mo, I'm glad you're asking that question. I have the same question. Because I'm coming from a perspective which I think the planning board will recognize is consistent for me. What were the current residents' expectations? And I still don't know yet, Alexis, where that fits in legally. I just like to raise it because we've been raising it, and maybe this is the project where we can define something legal around that.
Genghis, how is that? I own the land. It's free and clear. It's R1.
Well, let's have that discussion, Joel. I want to hear what the lawyer's got to say.
Well, have the discussion. My land.
Yeah, is your question whether or not the mistaken view that that property was not owned by a private person and was open to the public is relevant in any?
That's right, because Windsor's taught us that the needs of the neighbors and their safety, et cetera, plays a precedent, right? So I would think, and I've always thought prior to Windsor, if the local residents have an expectation about where they're living, how did that expectation get there? What does that expectation mean? And I know we've been loose about that because we've never talked about it, but so I'm asking, what does that expectation of the residents mean legally?
Nothing. I mean, for them to acquire a property right, they would have to gone through the steps of adverse possession. I mean, it doesn't mean nothing in not a sentimental way, but in terms of it being able to interfere with a superior property right that's recorded in deed, they're just not the same in any shape. I mean, I don't want to be curt about it, but.
Okay, no.
So,
I mean, we're looking for a clear answer, so that's a clear answer. Okay, Joel, you own the property and you can develop it.
Well, and also that there's literally no basis to the Forever Wild claim.
I mean, Forever Wild is a term that's used in our New York State Constitution. I mean, Forever Wild is like the Adirondacks. And I mean, so while Forever Wild is used, and I've used the term before, I used Forever Wild when we were discussing perhaps deed restriction with Kelts Farm. But I think that an assumption that property is forever wild is a lot different than a designation where something is forever wild. If something is forever wild, like you've been in the Adirondacks, if a tree falls, you have to get permission. I mean, it's just a completely different set of legal requirements.
Right, but basically what you're saying is from your legal analysis, there is no deed restriction in any way, shape, or form that prevents this land from being subdivided.
In its current form or current state?
In its current state. As I understand it, they are saying that this is not, there was an expectation that this was going to be forever, that this could not be developed. There's some kind of legal assessment that this could not be subdivided. And what you are saying is that there's no limit on this property that would prevent it from being subdivided.
Like, so I mean, I look back to just, it goes back hundreds of years. I mean, you record your rights in property, any interest in property is recorded. So, I mean, I think that if there is some indicia, whether it be in some covenant or whatever, that indicated that it was intended to be forever wild, I could see where the point of confusion would be. But absent there being a recorded document, I don't know where that impression would come from and if it would be found to be a reasonable belief given the strict requirements when it comes to property interest and recording them, so all knows about them.
So just to reaffirm what was said, and maybe this question is for you, Laura and Clark. There is no document that describes the current state of this land as being undevelopable or forever wild or anything that would prevent development.
Yeah, that's correct. All our research leads us to understand where the residents were coming from, like why they felt that it was to be open space. I think open space is probably a better word than forever wild. But then it did change, and it did change publicly and through the correct channels and through an amended subdivision. And so legally, the boundaries of that parcel are what is shown on the map that's presented to the planning board for sketch plan. And we do not see or have not been provided with any deed restriction to that property that says like no further subdivision. And the legal boundaries of the open space are described in the formation of Park District 9, and they don't include that area.
Laura, you just said it's not included. The open space is not included in this proposal. Joel doesn't own the open space. At one time it was part of the property. It was formerly relocated. I'm concerned, obviously, just like Mr. Khan, everybody, especially people buy in, but the facts are the facts. It is no longer open space, and Mr. Bezoin owns the property and has a right to at least make an application to do a subdivision. All right. Now, one other comment though, Joe, there's some good comments from the public regarding the long form, the EAF for the major subdivision. And you keep saying it's zoned R1, but the other issue that we need to come through with legal and planning is that there is a LC on those lots. And so we need to understand the impact of the land conservation on some of those lots versus R1 and how you developed a parcel with split zoning on it. And I know Laura, is going to be working on that. We don't have an answer tonight, but we need to come through that. So your EAF states that the land is R1, which is maybe the majority of it is R1, but part of it is in land conservation also. So that's something we need to modify also. And then we need to understand how we can develop a split parcel with the land conservation being part of it. Were you aware of that,
Sure.
Joel?
Yeah, Laura, I about that. Like, is it a percentage? Like, if it's 50% R1 or more, is it governed by R1? So she was going to tell me how to resolve that, but like I heard a lot of discussion from the neighbors that they use the land, for walking their dogs and everything. Well, it's actually private property. So, and one of the neighbors complained that I put up posted signs, but I put up posted signs because all the neighbors that cherish this property are just dumping their grass and their brush clippings there. So it's like, you value this woodland so much that you're just using it as a personal dumping ground, which kind of really disturbs me, But, Laura, when you and I talked about, like, when I was doing the EF on the steepness of lot number 1, and also one neighbor talked about these lots are much bigger than the neighbor's properties, by the way. Yeah, they may have 120 feet of frontage, but these lots are 400 feet deep, so they're huge lots. I mean, I would be willing to tear down the garage for, the corner property and shift those lots upwards, okay? And possibly even give up lot 5. I'd be willing to sell lot 5 to the town and they could make that an official parking lot. And I could clip the backs of the 4 remaining lots then, so that path, that informal path, people park on that little portion, that little piece of property that's owned by the sewer district, right? And then they walk across my property to get down to the Leishakill, which is kind of disturbing. I put posted signs there too. I mean, it's private property. If somebody falls off that cliff, my insurance is liable. I'm liable. But on the bottom left of the property, and you can see that land conservation line. I mean, if the town was willing to compensate me, I could sell that lot 5 in the backs of the other 4 remaining lots, and the town could make a path down to the Leishakill. They could connect up, from that point to the green space that's at the end of Shannon, that's maintained by the Avon Crest North neighborhood. Or the town could make a parking spot on that green space and walk into the Leishakill, either way. But I think that would kind of appease everybody, Food for thought.
I guess just to jump on what you're saying there, Joel, is there a configuration of this that doesn't put any of your lots on beyond the LC line?
Right there. I mean, what I presented. Okay. I mean, Laura has to tell me what governs on the LC for lot number 5, gang.
Yep.
If lot number 5 goes away, I can make the other 4 lots bigger.
Yeah. So Laura, is it only? I mean, I'm looking at the drawing here. So it seems like it's only lot number 5 that cuts into the LC. Is that true, or the other ones do too?
The other ones wouldn't be impacted because the houses are, the lots are so deep.
Sorry, I was trying really hard to highlight the LC zone. You could probably tell. I could not get it to highlight. Lot 5 has an LC zone, and then the rest of the parcels have LC zone in the rear. I have been discussing with legal. They're doing a little research on kind of like precedents if they can find any, but their initial answer was very similar to what you thought and felt, Genghis, which is you might have to just stay completely out of the LC zone. with these lots. And I think Complete Streets did know it, and we would have to coordinate with the Nature Conservancy. But there definitely is a chance to build some kind of a connection, which would be great. And then, like, just for sketch plan consideration, so like just to outline kind of sketch plan issues is I know we have to actually legally get back to the developer on what you can and can't do in a split zone, but the easy answer is to stay out of the LC zone if you can. Then also you got to look at the slopes, and I think, have you done a wetland delineation, Joel? I can't remember, but then there's also like a little like channel ditch that goes along.
There's no wet, there's a culvert up front, but it's not a wetland. It's just a drainage.
And then so there's like a drainage path that runs along Shannon Boulevard and then kind of cuts down and I think ends up draining into the Leisha, which is something that like the planning board just topography wise would want to look at.
But that's also filled with the residence debris though too, so it doesn't drain very well.
Laura, just continuing on with the LC thing, and maybe you can refresh my memory. I did not get a chance to dig out my notes. Did we do something with an LC? I don't think it was a split zone, but there was something that came across our table with LC down on Anthony Street, right?
Yeah, it was a split zone actually.
Was it? Yeah. So okay.
And we made them stay out of the LC zone. They stayed out of it.
Refresh my memory on it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it was Jackson Demolition, and they were doing their new storage yard at the end of Anthony Street, and they had a split zone. There was encroachment into the LC zone from the previous owner, and so part of their site plan approval was that they were restoring the LC zone and then keeping all of their new development out of the LC zone.
Yeah, that's why I remembered it, because I voted against that project. I remember now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think to Mr. Chairman Walsh's point, and Joel, is there a solution here that doesn't encroach the LC zone?
Yeah, Genghis, I threw it out there. I said that.
No. I understand the words. I mean, in terms of seeing it in a drawing.
Okay, but the town could buy the LC from me, put a beautiful entrance off of Route 7, and a beautiful path along the backs of the 4 existing lots.
How about an option that doesn't include the town buying it from you?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, we could trade something, maybe.
Well, so I mean, it's in the planning board's purview. If you're at a major subdivision, you have a requirement to dedicate parkland space to the town of Niskayuna. So, I mean, I don't know if you can do the calculations and you look at the square footage of your lot. If you can make a sense of.
Back up on that, Laura. You can dedicate land or pay the fee.
Or you can pay parkland in lieu of. Yeah. Although I think. Oops, Kevin got kicked off.
Hang on, did we lose Mr. Walsh? Did we lose Chairman Walsh?
Let's just give him a second.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's 4 lots, that's $12,000. You know, I would think that Genghis would offer me more than $12,000 for a lot in this unit.
Not if I can't develop it, Joel.
So this is the sketch plan, right? So I mean, this is the initial thing, like, and we had talked like, so the LC zone is an issue that we have to figure out. The steep slopes on lot 1 we talked about before, like where's the buildable area on lot 1? I think that we talked like how the utilities going to work, and you were confident that you had utilities, Joel, but I didn't know if you had a utilities map to look at. Just some kind of plan things that we would normally look at. And then, there is just always a question if, the typical way of dividing subdivisions is, between 4 and 5 lots. And I think you had said that you don't mind pushing it into a major subdivision for the benefit of a 5th lot. But that's something, to consider as well.
Yeah, but maybe you and I could sit down then. So if legal says that I got to stay out of the LC, I'll delete lot 5. Okay, I'll take the garage down on lot 4, and I'll move the other 3. I'll free frontage on the other lots, and that'll get me out of the steep zone somewhat on lot number 1. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes down to, do I save the Craigie house, you know?
Yes. So I don't know if this is true or not because there was so much back and forth in the stuff that I was reading today that Clark and I were like looking at. But someone said that the barn is actually a shaker barn. Is that possible? I mean, not the barn. The garage was a shaker barn.
It might have been. That garage right there is brand new. It was built in 2005.
Oh, well, okay. So they tore the old shaker barn down if it was. Okay, never mind then. Yeah.
There was a barn and a garage at 2421 Troy Road, too.
And that barn got taken down as well?
Yeah, National Grid property is now.
So, okay, so it sounds like maybe there's a couple other sketch plans that we'd like to see for the next meeting. Is that the sense?
Well, you gotta tell me the LC resolution first.
I agree. I know. I talked for and apologize because I think Alexis was busy doing some COVID stuff. So, and I didn't brief her for the meeting, but I talked to Paul Briggs about it on Thursday and on Friday. So we're really hopeful that we'll be able to get some legal guidance, like good legal guidance on that. Just initially, so people understand it. The thought was that you have to stay out, but we wanted to see if we could find some precedent so that we're making sure that everything's fair and legal.
What are the benefits to go into a minor subdivision then too, versus major if I go down to 4 lots?
So minor subdivision is a single planning board review, single public hearing. Once the minor subdivision is approved, the plat goes directly to being recorded. I have to double check. I think there's less fees associated with a minor subdivision by quite a bit. I'd have to double check that though.
One planning board review is enticing.
Yeah. Usually.
We don't have problems going till midnight, Joel.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So it sounds like, and has anybody seen if Kevin came back? Is Kevin back?
No, he is not.
Well, Mo, do you want to, I'll check my cell phone, but Mo, do you want to just lead? It sounds like we'll get back to him on the LT zone and then get maybe a couple different ideas for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's what it sounds like. Kind of the next step is I think there is just a basic question about developing in the LC zone that I think that just needs to be addressed. And I think from there, I think things will open up once you have a resolution of that question one way or the other.
Okay, and then we'll take.
Or why don't you look at the residents' concerns about that open space, using that open space more effectively? Accessing the Elisha Kill. Research that with the the Nature Conservancy or whoever owns it there.
Yeah, we have a couple good contacts in the Nature Conservancy for the Elisha Kill, so I think it's something that we can do. We'll get an answer to that question. Maybe just take a look, maybe Joel, to your benefit to see what the 4 lots look like versus the 5 and what the costs are, and then just come back with a couple sketch plans that we could hone in on at the next meeting.
Yeah, my concern though is that informal usage with the people parking off of Route 7. I would ask the town to block that off too. I mean, it's a safety issue on my property.
You mean right now, currently?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you can talk about with highway. The planning board, doesn't really have a say on liability and what's currently happening with trespassing on the property or all of the above.
Yep.
I apologize. I'm back. My lost connection and everything was not working. So I'm back.
Yay, Kevin. So we just
the planning
decided.
board lot 5 off me, Kevin, while you were gone.
No.
Laura, what purpose does that small sewer district lot serve?
It's access to a pump station, I think.
There is no station there that I could see, though.
I will look into that for you, Patrick. I think there's some kind of town infrastructure there.
Oh, it's a small lot.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah, I think-
owned by sewer district number 5. So to me, that means I'll ask Matt if it's actually owned by a sewer district. It's it's the town, but it's technically paid for in a different way and governed in a different way, and should be directly related to our sewer system.
So this is one that sounds like we're going to need a meeting on site to take a look at the property there, or at least some of us. Joe, for your concerns and for to try to understand the topography and take a look at what's going on down there.
Excellent idea. Can we do it this week?
I'm available later in the week, not tomorrow, but I'm available Thursday, Friday.
Perfect.
Maybe again, Laura, I know you're busy, but Clark, we can set something up there also. I'd also like to look for a project lead to jump on board and get down there also with us to take a look. I know you mentioned the town buying the property. The way things are going, I don't think that's gonna happen. Would be my intuition, I guess, from a financial standpoint plus a timing standpoint. So we got to look what we can do to stay out of the land conservation and get this to work with minimal impact down there to everyone. I know that's your goal, Joe, and it's not pick some tough ones, didn't you? But we'll get through it somehow.
Well, let me put something out there 1 second, Kevin. Then with Laura, with Kelts Farm being a the special use, do I have to pay the $3,000 a lot parkland fee on that, or is that no? Because I dedicated that green space, correct?
I don't actually know how that works. I will double check that and get back to you on how that works. I don't know. I mean, there's separate applications, right? There's a special use permit, and then there's a minor subdivision application, and you're definitely subject to whatever is required under the minor subdivision application. But if you are meeting all the requirements of a minor subdivision application with, I would think that would be satisfactory and that we had already decided it. But I will double check because I'm not 100% sure. You are just subject to whatever the minor subdivision code requirements are. There's a lot of them memorized.
Back on Jengus's idea that, and like Kevin just said, is the town's in dire straits right now financially, and that, it doesn't make sense for the residents to buy this at this point in time. So if I owed $3,000 a lot, which I don't think I owe because I donated all that green space on Kelts Farm, but if I did happen to owe 3,000 times 24, I'd be willing to give up this land and make the path,
Yeah, and I think that is, I think actually even the planning board can do the recommendation of the town board, but you can do something like that. Yeah.
Like on Oakmont, when I built Oakmont, to mitigate Oakmont, we built an interpretive walkway through the wetland library at our expense. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was outside the box. It worked out beautiful for everybody. Okay, so I'm going to try to think out of the box, and maybe if you get R3 on the side of Tall Oaks, I'd be a happy camper too.
Joe, that's a good comment. Joe, it's a good comment. It's a good open item again for planning office and legal to understand the open space requirements and parkland fees over at Kelts Farm, because I think in the past we've had we've had it split. Well, you've had so much land that you donated, but it's not enough to meet the intent, and then we've had reduced fee. I believe it states you can have a combination of both things also. So we need to take a look at that and understand it, and to see if there's a benefit to solve the problem here all at the same time. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be everybody get a nice little parking walkway that'll I should tell you.
But in the meantime, I don't know if any of the board members have any questions regarding this. And this is the first time we've seen it. Sounds like we got some issues that come through, especially the land conservation decision, or just stay out of it, as is what I heard tonight. And then the concern with the lot number. I guess lot number 5 is it, Joel? That has all the LC. Yeah. I don't want to pull. If I pull the map up, my computer might die. So, but so it's lot number 5, which is in question. It's got some pretty heavy duty topo lines over there too, if I recall. Lot number 5 also. So.
But the town LC doesn't say stay out of it. It just says requirements in R1.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and we talked about that. It's just that the LC zone requires 5-acre minimum subdivision for R1. And so if you're combining lots, does the more stringent lot requirement take hold, in which case you would need a minimum of 5 acres to subdivide that lot?
Yep.
Or if you stay out of the LC zone, do not trigger the LC zone requirements.
All right, let's figure it out.
Yeah. So it seems like in terms of Joel's application, we have a path here and there's some options that can do it. I do just, so Joel, nothing I'm saying here changes anything that was just said, but I just at least want to, again, the comment that I've made before about expectations of the residents, legal recourse of the residents based on those expectations, right? I think the concept of an inadvertent transfer of land is a very bizarre set of words. So I know, Alexis, you were clear that the residents have no rights where this is concerned and land is ownable and developable, but it's just something that that at least in the in my mindset being on the planning board, it's residents' expectations. I think you'd like to think that people know what they're getting for as long as they can once they buy and purchase property.
I feel bad for him.
Okay. Is there anything else on this subject right now, Joe? But we're going to set up a meeting and we need a project lead, and we can have a volunteer via email to the town planner or myself for a project lead. But obviously I'll go make it best effort to get down there also with you, Joel, to walk the site.
That'd be great.
Any other questions or concerns right now at this point in time?
Oh, one last thing, Kevin, though, is that there was a lot of artifacts in the house. And I'm accumulating those artifacts, and I'm meeting with Dennis Brennan, and I'm donating them to the town. So there's a lot of history books. There was a book from 1862 that actually gives the history of Niskayuna and Schenectady County, and it has a first-hand account of somebody that witnessed the 1690 massacre in Schenectady too. So it's a pretty interesting book. A lot of good stuff there.
That's great. That's great, Joe. We appreciate that. I know Dennis Brennan, our historian, does also. Thank you for doing that.
Yep. And I look at the house too, because especially Laura, because I know how much Laura wants to save the house, but I mean, the house is going to require that we're going to have to jack the whole house up, kind of like they did over at the Sanford home, and put a whole new foundation under it, I mean, it's amazing that the house is even standing, It's experienced a lot of water damage over the years and everything, so it's in pretty bad shape.
Are you still doing some estimates to determine whether you can save the house?
Yeah. I mean, we're still cleaning it out. I mean, it's a major cleaning job, obviously. So we almost have it cleared out or cleaned out and stabilized. And yeah, I'm trying to get estimates on jacking the house up right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions on this subject for the applicant before we move on? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Next up is 2721 Balltown Road, Aqueduct Animal Hospital. We have site plan application to convert to a 6-unit multifamily apartment. Mr. DiArpino is the project lead. I know that we have the applicant online, and thank you everyone for being patient. These meetings can get pretty long, so I appreciate everybody's time. I think what we can do is we start. I know that Dave did a site walk with the applicant and I believe the planning office. Maybe Dave, you can take it from here. How's that?
Sure. So last Friday we met on site and we toured the inside of the building, both the former vet clinic on the first floor and the apartments up on the second floor. Walked around the perimeter of the property, looked at the front parking circle loop configuration, and then from the areas that weren't locked off by the fences where the kennels were, walked around where the garage is and the one kennel coop on the north side, and looked at some of the landscaping. So basically, after we went through the property, it was pretty clear that all of the ancillary buildings and the kennels and the garages out back are in very poor condition. and doesn't look like anything could or should be salvaged out of that. And then the main building itself, although needs some repairs, is definitely salvageable. And the configuration of the first floor is interesting. There's a large stone fireplace that you can see the chimney on the south side coming up All Town Road. There's some hewn beams in there that were added for aesthetic purposes. But ultimately, you know, it's basically going to be a gut rehab on the first floor in order to get apartments in there. And then on the second floor would just be cosmetic updating and reconfiguring of some of this minor reconfiguration of some of the spaces of those existing apartments. The unique layout of the building allows it to have multiple entrance points. So each apartment doesn't have to come into a shared, and I haven't seen the floor plans that Alex has proposed, but at least from where the doorways are in the existing staircases, you can see where each apartment would have its own dedicated doorway, which is a nice feature. And then I think the configuration of how to get some parking or how to clean up the front entrance is another thing that we discussed. So those were the main talking points. After Clark, Laura, and Dart left, I did talk with Bruce and Alex a little bit because we did get the application sent to us via email on Friday. So we had everything. We quickly went through it and just gave them a very broad brush scope of what it would be for our recommendation going to zoning, and then what the process is from there.
Thanks, Dave. Okay. I don't know, Alex, did you have anything you want to add right now?
It sounded pretty good to me. I think the main thing that we talked about was, or everyone's concern was just the parking, which I think we all kind of, you know, came to an agreement of what would happen. Nothing major, but they just want to fit the right amount of cars. So I think we're pretty good.
Right, and that would be a function of, you know, if you get your zoning board of appeals, get your use variance in place, then we can work through those details. But it's good that you're aware that, you know, working with the planning board now with David, you know, kind of things that we'd be looking for, making sure we meet the ordinances for the parking meets the needs of the building and the residents, of course. So thanks, Alex. All right, does anybody else have any questions for Dave or a planning office or Alex regarding this thing? What we need to do tonight is make our recommendation to the ZBA. I know that we have one more meeting prior to this, but it's cutting it awful close, and the planning office would have to do a lot of work to make sure it got in the hands of the ZBA in time. Talked to David earlier, so I think we could make our recommendation tonight, and then we'll wait to see what, you know, if he gets his use variance, and then the project can go forward if it's granted. Sound good for everybody?
Just a quick question for Dave. Dave, this is Mike. When you looked at the ground floor, did you have any concerns about kind of suitability of layout to get 3 units down there? Again, looks like it was a single family residence. And I was just concerned about a layout of having 3 commercially reasonable units downstairs. Any issues from your perspective?
I don't think so. It's pretty open. So I think that the front door could be the front entrance to the main probably largest apartment. And then if you look at the building, there's the main building body, and then there's an L off the back. And the way that is shaped, I think he could easily fit the apartments that he was proposing in there. And considering where the staircase is that goes upstairs, where that's located too, it isn't like going in, it's not a center hall colonial, I guess, for lack of a better. You don't come in and see a grand staircase and that kind of divides the space in half. That's tucked away in the backside off to the north end of the building. So I think whatever the floor configuration is, he could do that. The only other thing I wanted to say about the application, Alex, was that your point D, the alleged hardship, hasn't been self-created. The zoning board is probably going to talk about that point only because even though I support the plan going through to make this a fully rentable unit and not having the commercial use component in there, just because a building has sat for a while or necessarily hasn't had movement in the market doesn't always mean that that's indicative of the right person coming in or the right investor getting that. They're probably going to ask you those questions, but I think that it's a at least my perspective is I think this is a suitable use for this building to configure into all apartments as opposed to having the two uses. So I would just say be prepared. I think the zoning board is probably going to ask you about that.
Okay.
Okay. Make sure I'm off mute. Okay, so we have the building and zoning permit denial. And basically, this is zoned RP, residential professional zoning, previously operated as a veterinarian clinic and registered as a registered non-conforming use. So section 220-52 states no non-conforming use shall be changed to any other than a conforming use for the district in which it is situated. As proposed, multifamily dwelling units are not listed as permitted conforming uses in Schedule of Supplementary Regulations 220 Attachment 22 Schedule IHRP District. Therefore, a use variance is required. So in that in those regulations, basically, it's residential, professional, single-family homes, and there's several other items that could be used, but not a multi-tenant or a apartment building is one of the uses that's not allowed, and hence the need for a use variance. So we always ask 3 questions, and we make our recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I don't have those in front of me. I'm not going to try to find them, but I think I know what they are. And the first question is there effect or is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? And David, what's your recommendation there?
I believe it is. There is an effect on the comprehensive plan, but it is very minor.
Okay, so there is an effect, but it's a little bit different than an area variance here because it's a use variance. So you say there's an effect.
Correct.
It's minor. We might want to back that up with some more information also, but I think that's going to fall under suitability.
Mm-hmm.
So all those in favor of Dave's recommendation that there is an effect on a comprehensive plan, but it's a minor effect, signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? No one's opposed to that? Okay. All right, the next question, I think this is the one we really need to give some ammo to it, is suitable. Is this the use, the multi-family dwelling suitable for the area in which it's proposed? David?
Yes,
So
it is suitable.
Okay, so recommendation is suitable, and when you need some ammo to support that, you have some, David?
So what I would be recommending to the zoning board is that currently the second floor is leasable space as apartments. I also think that the original building being a residence at one time being reverted back to that as opposed to being a professional office space also could be a reasoning to help bolster that.
Okay, those are good. I don't know if Laura has those, but I guess we can play back the tape.
Right, and I would like to add to that the previous owner having that commercial usage there in what has grown to be a predominantly residential area.
Yeah.
Right.
A good point.
We've
I agree
seen
with-
we've
yes, I
seen
agree
some
with
challenges
Mr.
there.
Khan on
So
that.
from my perspective, the closer we get to making this more of residences, multi-use, single family, whatever is not the line I'm drawing, but to be a place where there are residences, I think that's got to be something better for the entire area locally there.
Yeah, and I agree, Mr. Khan. So, and actually another way of phrasing that, it's moving toward a more conforming use versus what it is now. Maybe it isn't all the way to what's allowed by RP, but it's moving in the right direction. I'd also like to add that it is located between R1 properties on both sides of it. So residences versus commercial properties or professional office buildings or medical buildings. So it's situated amongst residential. I also feel that it's a minor impact to the neighbors versus, the non-conforming use in the proposal, since it's 6 units and there's 3 people living in there now. Is that what it is? 3 residences or 2? But anyway, there's 3 apartments in there now. So,
there's 3 apartments. I think 1 is only occupied currently.
okay, but there's 3 apartments in there that could be occupied. So, it's not that far of a stretch to, for 3 more. It's a tough piece of property, so I think it's a good use. And the other thing, it's interesting too, because of the COVID situation, it seems like a lot of office space is becoming available. At least that's what I hear over some from friends in Clifton Park, because a lot of people have proven that they can work from home, and office space, is plenty available in some locations. So I think that, this is a good use for the property with the multifamily.
Right.
Anybody else?
And there's another point I'd like to add too, is that the work that can be done on the site, specifically with cleaning up the kennels and taking down some of the ancillary buildings, also the reconfiguration of the front would have a very, very minimal impact on any of the mature landscaping that faces Balltown Road, and the existing vegetative buffers between the two single home properties to the north and south can virtually all be maintained.
Okay, good points, Dave. Okay, so we say the recommendation, it is suitable for the area which is proposed, and we gave some examples of why. So all those that agree that it is suitable signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Is there anyone that's opposed? Okay, no one, hearing no one opposed, suitable. And then the recommendation, David, the recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals on whether they should grant or deny the use variance.
The recommendation is to grant it.
And the recommendation is to grant. All those in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. And anybody opposed? All right. All right. No one is opposed. Okay. So I think we've got our recommendation. And if the planning office wants to type that up, I'd be glad to take a look at it. I'm sure Mr. DiArpino would take a look at it also. I have some notes. Make sure we capture a good recommendation. The Zoning Board of Appeals. You'll be on the agenda for the next meeting, which is, when is it, Laura? October 20-something?
Yeah, the 21st is the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. And then, we'll have an update for you, in the first November meeting on what occurs. Just to clarify on the granting of the use variance, when David DiArpino was saying that cleaning up the kennels and reconfiguring the front, you can maintain the vegetation, which is really, really good. I also think that it is a benefit, like, to the neighborhood, just actually by cleaning up the site. So, like, if you add a little bit extra to the facade there, you make the building look nicer to have that facelift.
And that's a good comment. So, building improvements, cleaning up the property, will also improve the area. Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
And we'll get to see that again, right? We'll
Yeah.
get to see that plan,
If
right?
as long as
If
it
it's
would be
approved, yeah.
dependent on the zoning board's vote.
Yeah, Mr. Ritmel, once the zoning board, you present your case, they make a decision and they grant the use variance, and you'll come back to us, and then we'll work on the details of parking and so on and so forth, and whether or not we need to have the architectural review board take a look at the changes on the facade, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
we need to get that use variance first before we keep going.
All right. Sounds good.
Any questions for the applicant or anybody? No? Okay, so recommendation's done, and good luck, and we'll see you soon, hopefully. Okay?
All right. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
All right, thank you. All right, and back to the agenda. Again, thanks everybody for their patience. 1335 Balltown Road, Wiggles and Giggles Early Learning Center, site plan application for tenant change. I know that we have Ms. Brown, either the applicant or representing the applicant online. Mr. Oster has agreed to be the project lead for this. So, I know the planning department's got some information, but maybe Ms. Brown, do you want to talk about what you want to do here?
Yes. So basically what I'm trying to do is a child care center. It is called Wiggles and Giggles Early Learning. And basically it's a daycare from 6 weeks to 12 years old. And I've been actually in the field for a very long time. My parents own an in-home daycare, and I've been an assistant in their daycare for about 6 years now. So I'm very motivated in this area.
Okay. And the property was previously a daycare. I can't remember the name of it.
Yep.
And
I believe it was Montessori. Not sure.
But actually, I have a question on that, Kevin. This is Chris, by the way. Kevin, Mo and I had talked about this one. I had been to the building a couple times for some prior applications, and I wouldn't mind taking lead on this and or helping with Mo. But I did have a question for the applicant. And And just clarification, is it the entire building? Because there was
No,
half Montessori school and the other half was daycare. You mentioned Montessori. Which side would you be on?
I will be on the left side. So the Montessori is on the right.
Okay, all right, got it.
That's when you're looking at the building facing Balltown Road, right?
From Balltown Road?
Or from Balltown Road.
Well, and this is John Samatulski. I'm the owner of the building, and here as well. And on the materials that were submitted, there is a diagram that was submitted as part of the package that shows the breakdown of square footages. And so the Montessori school has been there for many years, and they are, remaining as a tenant. And then, Wiggles and Giggles is going to take the space that was formerly, I believe, Niskayuna Daycare.
Right. So it is the daycare going back into the daycare space.
Yes.
Right? I think. Yes.
Yep.
That's the.
So, so Laura, is this, I guess the question I have, is this really a tenant change? If it was a daycare and the daycare is going back in, is it really a tenant change? Or did we just need to confirm the parking is adequate? Or
It's so it's technically a tenant change because it's been vacant for so long. But I think it's like very mild. I know I was there like when Chris walked through the space. I think I was there. The classrooms are all set up. We did actually go through a fair amount of review in 2018 because there was another daycare that was interested in taking over this exact same space. So we've done most of the work. I think, that there's already a shared parking agreement. Understanding when the drop-off times are going to be, I think was relevant to the last time that we looked at it. Just because the Niskayuna Community Daycare had, I think, slightly different drop-off times than the Montessori, which allowed for not too much of a car stacking in that parking lot kind of thing. So just understanding the number of kids, the number of drop-offs, just standard site plan things, I think are good. Clark and I put in, we just wanted to run it past you. We've gone back and forth with special use permits, but we think under the current understanding of when a special use permit is triggered and when it is not, that potentially this one doesn't trigger a special use permit because it's not a change in the building. The only thing that was a little bit different about it was that it's not really a mixed use building, it's an individual building, but the special use permit for the individual building to be daycare essentially was already standing. So I mean, I'm comfortable just taking it forward as a site plan approval. I just wanted to get you guys a sense of where you wanted to land on approval processes. I think it does at a minimum have to be a tenant change.
all right, to me, and I'll defer to Mo, but it sounds like those were good questions. And to be honest with you, again, I can't pull up the packet because of the computer might lock up on me here. But is that something, Ms. Brown, you can provide to the board? Hours of operation, number of students, anticipated drop-off times, number of employees, just kind of just a little bit of I guess, part of your business plan. So we just can understand traffic flow, interference concerns, and I guess we must have the same information for the Montessori, whatever it's called, school, right? So we can just make sure there's no conflicts so that everything works smoothly over there, I guess.
Yeah, so so as of now, the total of cars that I'm so far looking at is about 3 to 6. And the total number of children will be about 10 starting off. And my hours of operation, I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit. I was wondering 7A to 7P or 7A to 6:30P.
Okay.
Would there be any midday drop-off pickup? Would there be half-day?
Yes. Yep.
What would that
And
look
we-
like? Is it very flexible based on the individual guardian or parent, or is it, it's a minimum of 4 hours? So if you drop off at 8, you pick up at noon. How would that look?
Well, the schedule typically is based off of the parents' scheduling, and they will normally have a total hours a week. So they have to come in between those hours. They can't go over those hours. So they typically make their time.
Okay.
So there's
How
not a
many,
dedicated time, like everybody shows up 8 o'clock. It's whatever suits the individual's needs for like their work schedule or whatever time they drop off. Is that correct, Ms. Brown?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Which is good for, traffic control because everybody's coming at different times potentially, you know?
Yeah.
how many employee parking spots you think will be taken up?
Probably about. I'm guessing it will be probably about 3 to 6. And then cars coming back and forth from the drop off and stuff like that.
Okay. Thank you.
So in the past, and we're not asking anything different of you, Ms. Brown, and we've asked anybody else that's come before us, like you could write down just the, your proposed, what you expect your hours to be, how many employees, how many parking spots the employees would be taking, how many students, the fact that, their drop-off times may be between certain hours, but to be based on the parents' individual needs. Those are just things and think about full build out. When you get up and running, you might start out with 10, but you probably have a goal, and it's nice to know what your goal is as far as maximum occupancy also, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And we have that information, and I don't think there'll be any problems is what I'm hearing. And then tell me if I'm wrong though, but if it's a straight resolution for change of tenant, I mean, if we don't have any flags or any concerns with the parking, I think we should be okay.
Well, again, I've heard others, and Chris, I know handled this previously, but again, it sounds like the issues that we dealt with last time essentially are the same issues that we're dealing with here.
Right.
Yeah.
John?
I just wanted to ask, Laura, I don't know if I was interrupting you or not. This may be for John, but does anything change with the fenced playground area? Is everything exactly the same with this new tenant, or does anything on the outside get modified or changed?
No, everything is staying the same. The one thing that we've talked about is at some point I will come in for a sign on the front on the ball town, but we really wanted to get Ja Rochelle up and running. And then I'm going to probably work with AJ Signs and both tenants to have one coordinated sign. But that is really something, they would both like to do at a later time, if you will. So that's the one. But we went through, there were some materials, additional materials that showed the lighting plan that we submitted today. But I did have an architect look at all of that in terms of what the requirements are, and there's ample outdoor lighting. But to answer your question, other than the sign, which would be at a later time, there's really no changes to the playgrounds or the areas outside.
All right, great. Thanks.
Okay. Hey, John, does this take up all your space between this and
It does. Yeah. It does. Well, there's the second floor above the Montessori school. Somebody mentioned COVID. Originally, I have co-working space in downtown, and I really think co-working would be a great additional, and maybe there's one co-working in Niskayuna right now, but a lot of communities like Niskayuna, even with COVID, the number of people working at home. So at some point I was hoping to look at whether we could take some of that second floor space. But yeah, this is the vast majority of space. But I think it's a good fit because basically you kind of have both uses. And the drop-offs are going to be coordinated. The Montessori school has it down to a science. And so we've already met and discussed the traffic patterns. And, it's a pretty large lot. And so there's plenty of extra parking spaces, and it allows, a small queue. I don't think there'll be much of an issue when Wiggles and Giggles, but, Montessori. So those times will be staggered.
Great. That sounds great.
Yeah, I think it's good that it's almost the exact same use and same configuration for the entire building that's kind of been there for such a long time.
Yeah, I was going to say you definitely do want to coordinate with Montessori because the Niskayuna Community Daycare did have staggered drop-off times. which was discussed like way back when Niskayuna Community Daycare and Montessori were actually originally getting their special use permit. Because it's a pretty big car, but like, you know, Ja Rochelle could definitely fit more than 10 students. I think Niskayuna Community Daycare had like maybe 30. And so if you get like 30 on your side and you get like, I think Montessori has the 30-ish area, and then you can actually create stack ups. And so that's the only thing that the planning board was really looking at, is to just get a sense of when the drop offs are there. And if it makes sense during this review to maybe actually designate a drop off sign and change a couple of the parking spots around. I mean, I always think outside the box, like, you know, if it makes sense to just actually designate a lane now so that people are driving up and dropping off and checking temperatures. So my daughter goes to JCC. When we were dropping her off, like nobody got out of their cars anymore. Like we drove up, they reached the window, temperature popped out, they bring them back. Like I don't know how it works anymore. It's totally different. So you might want to just think about that when you're reconfiguring, if there's a reason and a good way to reconfigure the parking lot. And then the only other question I had is that, John, when we met, like you were talking about doing facade upgrades, because some of the facade is a little tired. And some of the landscaping also is getting a little old. And so I was just wondering if, you know, those facade upgrades were still out there and we're still talking about making that building look a little nicer when we're putting new tenants in.
Yes, and the answer is yes. The arrival of Wiggles and Giggles kind of put some of our energy on the inside first in terms of just kind of upgrading the interior. So I've been getting estimates on windows. So some of the windows will be replaced. I don't know if you've noticed, there's a couple shingles that have come off. So there will be a lot of cleanup, but the majority of that is going to take place in the spring. And part of that also, I think, when we met, is I just took a huge impact from COVID. You know, my business is real estate. And I mean, I'm kind of still rebuilding from that. So I had to take the resources that I had to help work with Ja Rochelle to get open. But I will definitely, I don't know if you've noticed, we've been taking much better care of the landscaping, and it's been shaped. And I'm getting estimates on the windows and the other things. So there will be improvements.
Okay.
And one last question for Ms. Brown. If things proceed as well as we expect, when would you like to be up and running?
I would hopefully like to be open up in the middle of November, just because there's some other inspections and everything else that I will have to do on my end.
Okay. So the upgrade plan you mentioned, John, does it sync up with Ms. Brown's timeline?
Well, we've been, as far as replacing windows or anything like that, we weren't planning that as part of her opening. Laura, were you thinking that that was going to happen as part of Ja Rochelle's?
No, I don't think it has to. I just know that the last time that we were looking at in 2018, we did want to see some sprucing up of the building when there was a new tenant change. It's something we ask because it's kind of like we don't have a lot of leverage sometimes just to upgrade our town center overlay. So if we do have a chance, like when there's a tenant change or something, I think we do try to say, like, how can we, you know, is there anything that we can do to this? Like, I don't necessarily think the timeline has to be mid of November, but I'm wondering if you guys would consider like just like stating in a resolution for site plan approval that any facade upgrades that can be included in the spring as, you know, part of this project would be highly encouraged or required, or however you'd want to do that. I just think that I do think it's looked better. I have noticed that the building looks much less neglected, and I think maybe you guys can jump in here if you are planning signs. Maybe we could defer the facade upgrades to the sign discussion. Yeah. I don't know. I do think it's something that just.
Yeah, the only problem with the sign discussion is if he comes in with a compliance sign, right? It's really only a building permit. It's only if the sign requires a planning board action or a ZBA action, right?
No, not because I don't think that there's existing signs on Belltown Road. Like if they're just replacing an existing sign, then that's just a building permit as long as it's code compliant. But if they're putting up a brand new sign, I think it does.
So John,
Well, and I wouldn't have any issue with your resolution. You know, if we can work towards getting them up and running, you know, have the resolution say that, you know, we are going to come back to you for the sign, you know, and I have no problem committing to, you know, additional exterior, you know, facade improvements in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah, what would be nice, John, is I know, because I was on that walkthrough the last time with Laura and you, and I appreciate that, is that you could, on your own, you know, there's no architect, right? You don't have an engineering firm representing you, representing yourself here. You know, what would you do? Make some notes, maybe pass those on or email those to Laura, what, you know, kind of things you're thinking about. Because I know you don't want to go too far because of cost and because, you know, the economy right now. But if there's things that you're sure you're going to do, why don't you just write those down and send those into the planning department, and then we'll consider including those in the resolution. You know?
All right. But as far as the change of tenancy for Ja Rochelle, what is that something that can be resolved tonight, or how does that?
No, I think we have to call for a tentative resolution if Mo is okay with it for the next meeting, and if you could get some information about, you know, what you're committed to doing in the future, which I understand, again, it may not be overwhelming, but if you could do that, I don't see why not, why we couldn't have a resolution for the next meeting for a tenant change.
Yep. And
Yes.
the, you know, the running of the business for Mr. Brown, you know, hours, things like that. And John, we've heard you, right? We've heard what you had to say about, you know, the situation and circumstances you're in. So, you know, deferring things for when the building's up and running and generating income, and, you know, the spring comes about, and hopefully we're living in a better world at that point in time. So.
Right. Thank you.
All right, so everybody's okay with a tentative resolution? And,
Yeah, I have a question. I have one question for John. In the green shaded areas that Wiggles and Giggles will move into, are there any bathrooms on the first or lower level?
Yeah, there's bathrooms, multiple bathrooms. Hang on, let me bring up that diagram on my end.
Yeah, there's in the blue portion, they're shaded. They're along that outside corridor facing the rear of the property. But on the green, it doesn't designate any bathrooms. Just wondering if there's any existing bathrooms in there, if they have to go into the blue shaded area.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Laura, can you bring that up? So I'm looking. Oh yeah, there we go. So the in the green, when you look at the lower part, the lowest part, there's 2 restrooms. Yep, just go a little to the left, whoever's got the hand. So there's 2 restrooms down there. And then as you continue up, there's another small restroom right there. And then there's another 2 restrooms just above that. So so that's all the restrooms on that floor. And then when you go to the lower level, there is that 2 restrooms there, Ja Rochelle?
Yep.
Yeah, 2 restrooms on that level. So, you know, it's definitely up to code and plenty of restrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like the open items are, we'll have a tentative resolution, but would like you to, John, to submit things that you had in mind that you'd like to do in the future, you know, that you can commit to, and also like the I want to say business plan, but the data on the maximum number of children, hours of operation, you know, those types of things, just a kind of a summary of what we have here, you know, just for information, basically. It sounds like you're already internally coordinating the 2 schools, you know, schools and daycares yourself. So we always get it like written down, you know, how many employees, how many parking spots will be required to support the business. You know, it doesn't have to be elaborate, you know, it can just be bullets, you know, but
Just
something we usually always have, though.
Absolutely.
Okay. That sound good, Ms. Brown?
Yes, sir. It sounds good.
And then we can get you, you know, get this done quickly for you, and then you can get in business in your November timeframe if that works. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's good to see the building.
Thank you.
again.
You okay with that, Mo? Oh, good. Got thumbs up?
Good news is it'll be first thing on the agenda next time. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right. Anything else with this subject right now? No? Okay, we'll see you at the next meeting then.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.
Thank you for your patience. All right. So we're done with discussion items, and we're going to go right to reports, and I'll just turn it over to Laura and you can work down those.
Oops. Hi. Okay. So, sorry, I'm scrolling all the way back up. Yes, the JCC sign has been installed. I sent a couple emails to you guys. They just finished the landscaping and retaining wall. I think the landscaping and retaining wall looks fabulous. I definitely think an improvement there. And I don't know if anybody's driven past it at night. I drive past it at night quite a bit. It's on my way home. It does seem to be casting more light than the existing sign had. And the reason I say that is because downstream, the church downstream has the same exact sign as the old JCC. I think they were put up at the same time. And if you look at the light casting from the church sign versus the JCC is definitely more. So, I mean, I know that we're shooting for readability and we want to try and make it look as residential as possible. But my recommendation would be that we at least look at what it's like with a black background to see if we can reduce that light casting a little bit and see if we can make it a little more readable. I don't know if anybody had a chance to drive by. I did talk to the JCC. They're happy to meet with us. He's willing, and as soon as we want to, I can just send him an email of what we want to see, and he'll change it the next night, and then I can let you guys know that it's been changed so you can drive by. And then I would say when we've seen a couple things, or maybe we all just want to stand out there and look at it, then we can kind of lock in really what we want to see and attach that memo to the resolution so we can finalize it. But my recommendation would be that we at least look at what the black background does to see if it reduces that light.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I don't know about maybe the size of the font, or maybe it seems like for me it's hard to read. When it gets to the spot for me when I'm going by it, when I'm ready to read it, then I'm like too busy looking at traffic, so I can't read it. But yeah, I agree. It's difficult. But that's me. So yes, Laura. I mean, if you have them change the background, but please have them do it for a couple nights though, in case we're tied up, more than one night. What's everybody else think? Same thing?
Yeah, so my thought is I can send an email tomorrow and ask him to try the black background for a week. And then following that week, we can do an on-site meeting with them at night. And so just if you haven't driven by, ask him to leave it up tonight. Maybe I'll have him leave it up one more time. He could change it on Wednesday, leave it up for a week. And then I could get you guys' feedback, and then we could do the project leads and whoever else wanted to come, just like a final site visit to set that limits and put that memo to the resolution.
Laura, is it is it a laptop they use to change it, or is it a thing they plug in, or?
He said it's like a program that he has on his computer. He did say that he's not 100% sure how to change the light levels, but I told him kind of not to worry. If we do want to change the light levels, we can reach out to Saxon Signs and have them be there. So,
Okay.
so they're very willing to work with us, happy to do whatever we wish. He just wanted some direction from us so that we can kind of finalize where the sign's going, and then he doesn't have to worry about it.
Did they feel it was hard to read themselves? I mean, they must have some opinion, right?
I did not ask him that. I think it's
Yeah.
a little, intimidating sometimes when I talk
I
to people.
gotcha. But I think it's just a matter of playing around with it, just getting it just right, and I think it'll be okay. It does look a lot better though over there.
So the sight lines are a lot safer, and the landscaping is very nice. I think it dresses up the entrance a little bit.
Yep, I agree. All right, so why don't you go ahead and do that, Laura? Does anybody else have any thoughts, additions to what they'd like to see Laura do there?
Well, I'd be interested in taking part in the meeting.
Okay.
And I don't know, am I the only one who sees the grid or the matrix in what's supposed to be the white area?
No.
I find that is really making it more difficult to read.
I think that is why. So Daisy had an exact similar comment to you. She's not at the meeting tonight, but she felt like it looked more grid-like than the one that we saw in the parking lot at the town hall. And I don't know if that's just, I don't know why that is, but I noticed that as well. And that's why I'm wondering if we switch it to the black background and it'll look a lot better.
It's probably a setting.
Maybe. And so maybe like,
maybe they should get the sign manufacturer in for a little bit when.
Okay. Yeah. I'll invite him and tell him what our concerns are right now.
Yeah.
Or maybe they could get rid of the grid or the matrix.
Well, if we go to black, it might get rid of the grid because the black background will, match the grid. That's why it might be okay with the black background,
A lot of people find it harder to read white on black.
Well, one of my staff was saying near the JCC, like, what if they, how the high school does red on black? What if they do blue on black? I don't know how bright that could be if they do blue.
Yeah.
It'd be cool.
Yeah. We'll check it out. Okay, Laura. Thanks. You want to go ahead, Laura? You want me to tell you what you got on the?
Oh yeah, no, I've got it here. Sorry, I was just
No
yes.
problem.
So Rivers Ledge update is they're actually working on phase 2. I talked to them a couple times. They're putting some plans together and are we'll put together a date when they're going to come before the planning board and talk about phase 2. And construction for phase 1 is going to start up again in October. They obviously had some COVID delays and some stuff that they had to take care of, but they do want to start up in October again. So we'll probably send out that email for blasting because they still have a fair amount of blasting to do. And the expectation is that they would put a majority of the utilities, the offsite utilities in this late fall, winter, provided that we don't have storm of the century and get going. So probably you'll actually see shovels in the ground and machines out there working again in late October. And then you'll probably get an update on where they're at and what they're thinking for phase 2, if not late 2020, then very early 2021. Did anybody have any question on that?
No.
Okay. And then Ace Hardware, we've got the building permits for them. They're working through the interior renovations. We've been getting quite a bit of questions from the public on what's going on because there's quite a bit of activity out there. So they've started, and Clark reached out to them because a lot of the public is asking what the plan is for opening. And, they've got a lot of work to do, but I think that their goal, if they can get there and, it would be great, is to open, just prior to Black Friday and pull in that Black Friday crowd. So that would be exciting.
Yeah. People need
Great.
snowblowers.
They may need to come back to us. They're potentially changing the location of their propane tanks. I don't know that it's an administrative approval because we're pretty tough on propane tanks. So you might see them once before, or they might stick to where they had them. We'll see. The manufacturer, I think Clark can jump in more about that. The manufacturer didn't like the location that they had of the propane tanks on their initial site plan.
Yeah, he did. They still owe us some more information on where they want to move it to.
So stay tuned to that. But there's a lot of work going on, and they do want to try and open by Black Friday.
The questions from the public have been positive.
Everything I've heard has been really positive. Like Clark jumped in, some lady, or maybe it was Jean, was like crying because she was like, "This is the only thing that Niskuna has been missing." Like I moved here and I walked to my grocery store and I walked to something else. Did you talk to her? Did Jean talk to her?
I think Jean talked to her, but we've had several other calls and people are extremely excited and happy to see it coming. So
Great. Nice.
Is the price of lumber back down?
No.
Since
I
we're
think
talking
it's coming
hardware?
down though. My cousin works at Lowe's and he said that the treated lumber is coming down, but he thinks that the green lumber is going to go up because they've been treating all the green lumber. I was like, I don't know. I think that that's probably, I don't know how much of is used for new construction,
But nothing's changing with Knott Street building, right?
not that I've heard. I do want to reach out to him because I did, get that summary from him on what his pause was and, how he's going to prep the site for, winter. and I don't think I've seen any movement on the site. I do kind of watch it because obviously very close to the town. So I do want to reach out to him and see, where he's at with his prepping and, if the cost of lumber's changed anything for him. But I haven't heard anything different since the last time I reported to you guys on that.
Okay.
And then Mohawk Commons. Oh, go ahead. Leslie?
No, that's okay.
Oh, okay. In the email that I sent you guys for planning board, I attached just a quick diagram of where they're going to put EV parking spaces in Mohawk Commons. They're not changing any green space or curbing or parking spaces, so it doesn't. I just like to update you guys when they're putting in EV charging stations.
Laura, that's not really Mohawk Commons, right? It was Mansion Square.
Oh, you're right. It's Mansion Square.
I looked at it, I was like, that's not Mohawk Commons, that's the other side. Because
Yeah,
it's
you're completely right.
Ralph, so it's a hybrid development. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like actually quite a bit of EV charging stations. 1, 2, 3, 4. So like 8 parking spaces. So I think that's great. And they're doing that all on their own to serve their customers. And then my last report is, sorry, Kevin, I lost it. What is it?
COVID-19 updates.
That's actually not mine. I think we sort of talked about that before we started streaming. The town board is potentially having a hybrid live meeting on October 13th. And if all goes well, I know I keep saying this at every meeting, but we're going to try and have an in-person meeting, I think maybe for our second October meeting. Nobody's required to attend. There's no issue at all with continuing to participate remotely. But for anybody who does want to try to do in person, we're going to have our own microphones, but you will be closer than 6 feet. So I think you'll probably have to keep your masks on. Alexis can jump in, and there's like plastic sneeze guards that are going to be between you guys. So it's not perfect. It's like the best hybrid thing that we can come up with. And then, we'll probably try and release the plan to you, or you guys can watch the town board meeting and see how it goes. And then just let me know your comfort levels. Again, you're more than welcome to continue. We're going to have video there. So potentially we'll be able to see you. You'll definitely be able to see us. It's a good system. We were testing it this morning.
So no one has to answer, but just informally, since we're all here, except for DC. Are there any folks that would just rather stay virtual and not meet in person?
I don't want to cut you off. Yeah, Laura, during this meeting, I sent Yasmin an email saying, like, I really don't think we should. So the executive order was just issued tonight, extending the ability to meet remotely through November. And given that we have 6 town board meetings because of the budget in October, and then we're having the polling for during the elections, that border is just so crowded, and it's just, we don't have somebody assigned to clean and disinfect after every meeting. That I would just recommend that, let the town board have their meetings this month. They have so many, and let the elections, and then we'll resume in November.
I'm completely fine with that. I'm just trying to, comply with whatever. But Jengus, to answer your question, there's members of the zoning board that aren't ready to go back. So there's probably members on the planning board as well. They don't have to answer.
I mean, I'll go on record saying that as long as I can be virtual, I would like to be virtual.
Yeah, that's, I think, fairly normal. And we do very well virtually. And I haven't heard complaints from the public. Like, I actually absolutely loved going out to the stub today and meeting face to face with some of the Windsor Drive residents. It's so nice to meet people face to face. I haven't met any of them.
That's the thing, Laura. Like we did over in with Gail, etc. So we do that, right?
Yeah. But
anyway,
that's a smaller scale, and you're not 3 feet away from somebody in a room or anything. So, and you're outside. Like, it's so different if you're outside. So
I think regardless of how the world is going to think differently tomorrow morning, I think COVID is still an issue.
Yeah, I'm okay with doing whatever we need to do. I think we've been successful, and if we have to, wait to help the town board and all the work that has to go on over there, I mean, that's fine with me.
Okay, so then let's plan for our next meeting to still be virtual. I think everybody on the call was on board with that being virtual anyway. So.
Okay. All right. That takes us to commission business, unless you have something else, Laura or Ms. Kim. If not, okay, we'll go commission business. Mr. Oster, you have anything for us tonight?
I do not.
Okay, Mr. Diapino?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. McPartland?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Khan?
No, sir, thanks.
And Mr. Scributinus?
Nothing for me.
Okay, and Chris, Mr. Laflamme?
Nope, nothing to add.
All right, and how about Ms. Gold? Do you have anything tonight?
Yeah, thank you.
No?
Just a little something extra on my lap.
Yeah, Ms. Skull's got some company.
Yeah. So the only thing I got is thank you, everybody. I know the hardest part with the virtual is trying to talk and then somebody else starts talking and there's a delay. And that's the most challenging part, you know, is trying to make sure who's speaking first and everything. But otherwise, I think it goes well. I did meant to mention earlier when we did the approval of the minutes, you know, we have 3 sets of minutes tonight. So I have to make sure I thank Jean Fody for her hard work with the minutes. It's not easy. I know it would drive me crazy trying to do it. So I do appreciate everything she does for us over there. And that's all I have. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Khan, motion to adjourn. And I'm going to second the motion to adjourn.
Awesome.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing no one opposed, we'll adjourn. It's at 10 o'clock exactly. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your
Look like an
time.
opposition,
everyone.
Ms. Gold.
Thank you.